Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Something I want to bring up that is very relevant to Islam, but it was also very much part and parcel of the Gnostic sects and is also part of Satanism, is something called Antinomianism. So this currently is a copy of the Encyclopedia of Islam, and it mentions Antinomianism, and it falls under the Islamic name of Ibaha. Well, actually, let me just change my cursor, enable my cursor. Okay, so what you have is antinomianism falls under Ibaha. So now I'm going to bring up the definitions of, so let's have a look here in Wikipedia. Antinomianism against the law is a view which rejects laws or legalism and argues against moral, religious, or social norms. Right? You've got questions, okay, from two Greek words meaning against, nomos meaning law. So antinomianism means against the law. Right? And let's actually have a look and see what they say. Antinomianism, theologically, is the belief that there are no moral laws, that there are no moral laws. Okay, so you've got all of these definitions. So let's have a quick look here so if we go to Wikipedia, it rejects law or legalism and argues against moral, religious, or social norms, right? So that's antinomianism, so we have agreement here. Now, notice, though, that you've got this concept, do what thou wilt, is the whole of the law. This very much is the creed of, shall we say, of Thelema. This would be the Aleister Crowley's Thelemic Society, and this was their creed, which means, again, which is an antinomian, specifically and explicitly antinomian creed. Interestingly, the very first hit that you find is something called Baphomet clothing. Very interesting. We've mentioned Baphomet before. I might get to him tonight, because originally, before Baphomet became associated with the devil, which happened, I believe, in the 19th century, right? So before Baphomet became associated with Satan and Satanism, Baphomet was the original name for Muhammad, right? So the first hit here is Baphomet clothing. So let's have a look here. So do what thou wilt.
This
Yes?
is huge. This is huge. Do you have any reference for that?
For what?
That you can show us for that Baphomet was basically Muhammad?
Yes, I'll get into that. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly, I'll get into that. But I just want to start tying now. Look, now what I'm presenting is evidence in need of further investigation, deeper investigation, because everyone's been, as we all know, very, very keen to just blame the Jews and to look away from any source that might say otherwise. But when you start digging into Islam, you start finding connections to Satanism, secret societies, and all sorts of crazy connections that one would not have expected. So let's have a look here. So you've got, again, do what thou wilt is the satanic mandate, right? So these are just some random searches that I found. Now notice on this one, on this web page here, the backslider in heart shall be filled with his own ways. So in other words, you do not have an external moral absolute standard that you follow. For instance, if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, God is your moral standard, right? So you value everything you do in terms of how would God see that? If God is absolutely good, how good are you relative to that? Whereas if you're antinomian, you then state, my way, my thinking, my personal opinion, my views are all that matters. Do what thou wilt. What I think is all that is necessary, right? So this again goes directly against God, and it says that what I think, what I want to do, that's all that matters. So the very essence of Satanism, it says here, is to do your own thing, right? Baphomet clothing, very, very interesting. So I just wanted to bring this up as a mention of what this means. So antinomianism, let's look at Ibaha. So I'm going to go to the reference on Ibaha. So let's get to Ibaha. Okay, let's go back here. One. Ibaha in Islam falls under the category of mysticism. So dervish, the Sufis, dhikr, which is the ritual remembrance of Allah. It's like chanting and prayer that from a state of meditation that binds you to Allah. And they've got Ibaha here as one of the practices which would then technically bind you to Allah, right? And it falls under tasawwuf, which is Sufism, right? So this falls under Islamic mysticism. So obviously it's a legitimate practice within Islamic mysticism. Now let's have a look at Ibaha here. Now again, this is the Encyclopedia of Islam, and it's important to remember that The authors are both non-Muslim as well as numerous Muslim authors that have contributed to this, which is the gold standard in Islamic academia, right, which explains Islam in depth. I'm using volume 13, which is like a dictionary, but it's a shorthand version, and it gives you the references that you go to get more detail. For instance, volume 3, page 660b would hold more information. But let's have a look. Ibaha. Originally, making a thing apparent or manifest, hence making a thing allowable, so making something permissible to do, or free to him who desires it. In law, ibaha was first used with regard to those things which everyone is permitted to use or appropriate. So there were things for everyone. However, in theology, ibaha is a term that is commonly applied to antinomian teachings or actions of certain Shiite and Sufi groups. So this applies very much to the Sufi, as in the accusation ibahat al-mahrim, which means allowing the forbidden. So what this implies is that the Sufis are allowed to practice antinomianism. They're allowed to violate the law, to go against the law. Because Muhammad, if you think about it, if you look at the actions of Muhammad within Islam, if you look at what he's called his sunnah, he violated the 10 commandments, right? In Hebrew, I believe it's properly called the 10 statements. But let's call it the 10 commandments. Everyone knows it as that. So Muhammad violated. He had a 6-year-old wife, which is thou shalt not commit sexual immorality, right? Which he did. He lied. He broke every one of the 10 commandments. So he was the first person to practice antinomianism, and therefore those high scholars at the highest levels of Islam are allowed to follow in his footsteps and themselves be antinomian. Just wanted to bring that up. Okay, if there's any questions or comments, you guys are welcome to speak up, and I'll take any questions. But just wanted to point that out. So antinomianism, which is equivalent to Satanism, is actually a part of Islamic doctrine. Any comment from you, Harry, on that point?
No, it's very interesting, and I would like for you to continue. But we have a question from
From
Chris. Can I
Chris.
take it?
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris. Go easy, please.
Hello, guys. Yeah, no. I'm obviously a nationalist. I'm an English nationalist, but I've actually been interacting with a few Muslims of late. Would you ever obviously I know this is separate, would you ever come on a show where I can like moderate it and see you with a Muslim, for instance, on my channel?
Look, if we did that, there would have to be certain rules in place, because as the Sharia teaches, as Islamic law, and they all want Sharia law for Britain,
Yeah.
Sharia explicitly allows Muslims to lie. In fact, it is mandatory.
Yeah, it's taqiyya, yeah.
No. Taqiyya is a distraction. Pretend that taqiyya doesn't exist. There are numerous forms of Islamic deceit and deception. There are numerous doctrines of deception with Islam. Taqiyya is like what the CIA would call a limited hangout. So you admit that you got wrong and you point this one, you see, but they can justify taqiyya. They can say, well, taqiyya is used when your life is in danger, and then you have to choose the lesser of two evils. Do you allow someone to be killed or yourself to be killed, or do you lie a little bit, a little white lie? So they can try and justify taqiyya. Now, taqiyya, many will tell you, taqiyya is a Shiite practice, right? Now, technically, taqiyya is a Shiite practice. However, the Islamic scholars on the Sunni side also happen to call it taqiyya. Technically, in Sunni Islam, the name is muruna. Okay? Oh, sorry, muddarat. So technically, it's muddarat. So they can say it's not taqiyya, but they have the same practice of deceit is within Islam, within Sunni Islam as well. However, taqiyya is just one of the form. It is not even the main form of Islamic deceit. It's one of the minor forms, right? But they'll admit to it because they can justify it. Whereas the other forms of deceit are very, very different. There's a whole list of them. And in fact, it is obligatory for Muslims to lie to you. Understand, it is obligatory. It is not optional. And two, even if they don't outright lie, they are told it is religiously precautionary for them to utilize words and phrases that deceive. Understand?
Yeah.
So also,
are you a Christian, by the way? Or?
Yes, I am.
So obviously I might get this wrong, obviously, but so what they would say, obviously, with Muhammad and Aisha, they would say, well, this is common practice even with Christianity back in the in medieval times, that what Mary slept with Joseph when she was 12, or I might have got that wrong, but they say these kind of things.
Okay. On that point, now they'll make these claims, right? They'll make these claims. First of all, Joseph and Mary 2,000 years ago. So that's a little bit out of date. It's not practiced today, right? Even if we take it let's just lay out a few things. It's not practiced today. Two, in their own Quran, they speak of this and they tell this story as, oh, we love Jesus. We worship Jesus too. And Allah created Jesus. Allah went to Mary and he gave the spirit to the angel Gabriel. And the angel Gabriel bent between the legs of Mary and breathed into her vajayjay. Okay? And he breathed Jesus into Mary's vajayjay. And this is all good. Now, how come the very same story in the Quran is perfectly okay when the same story in the Bible is, oh, that's evil, that's disgusting, oh my God, that was pedophilia? But the exact same story in Islam is, no, it's good stuff, all righteous, perfectly okay. Do you understand? These are hypocrites. They know that you don't know the Quran very well. And two, it is sunnah for all Muslims for all time, because Muhammad can never be accused of having done anything imperfectly. Muhammad is perfect, and to accuse Muhammad of imperfection is the death penalty within Islam.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I would like to set up something. Is there a way of contacting you?
Yeah, look, you can get hold of me directly on Telegram, but also there would need to be certain rules, because the form of
I'm actually I'm on your side, but you're obviously more clued up than me. But
the form of debate. Before we go on,
I grew up in Birmingham in England, and I've had to move out of the city because of Muslim extremist grooming gangs. But obviously they know the Quran a lot better than me, and I've debated a few of them. I've held my own a few times, but like listening to you in 5 minutes, I would very much love to moderate that debate. But also,
I did a discussion, not the previous show, the show before that, on my channel, my YouTube channel. I did a discussion, and I discussed and I showed how, Muslims always want to debate. This is because they've developed a specific form of utilizing rhetoric in a deceptive manner. It's a deceitful, dishonest use of rhetoric. Specifically, as I said, to deceive. It's called the ilm al-badi, okay? If I remember the name correctly, it's called the science of rhetoric. And one of its sub-disciplines is to utilize rhetoric in a manner to deceive, right? For what they call refutations. These refutations are not designed to find, these debates are not designed to find truth. They're designed to win. They're designed to persuade. Well, actually, pardon me, let me just see if I can find it. Let me see if I can actually find the it's gonna take me a while. So understand, so they've got a form of debate designed to persuade, not to find truth. So if I were to have such a discussion, there would have to be very specific rules set in place so that one can prevent them from lying and deceiving, because they will utilize sophistry and rhetoric to win. Understand?
Yeah, so if I was a moderator, how would I put those rules into place? Because I'd rather it just go back and forth, and as much as I possibly can. Obviously, I'd rather it not get into a shouting match. I would moderate it like that, but
man, I would tell them, look, I'm not interested in the Quran. I'm not interested in the Hadith. I'm not interested in the Tafsir. We want to go straight to the Sharia. We want to go straight to the Sharia, straight to the Islamic law. Because if they want Islamic law for Britain, and if Islam is a religion of law, what are its laws? So let's go to the source where those laws are found, and let's discuss those laws. Okay, now, Ilm al-Badi, I need to find... here we go. Okay, see? So it starts here with the branch of rhetorical science, which deals with the beautification of literary style. I love these euphemisms they use. The artifices of the ornamentation and embellishment of speech. Now, the artifices of speech would be a device utilized to deceive. Understand? So they have a method for doing this. So I would want to speak from the Sharia. We'd go to the Sharia directly, and I'd say, look, here's page X of the Sharia. Let's see what it says, because Muslims, let's take a simple one. Ask them, what is the punishment for apostasy within Islam? I'm not asking whether it's being applied right now. What is the official punishment within the 4 schools of jurisprudence? And it's very clear across all of them, the penalty is death.
Yeah.
Right? So I want them to openly admit. Now, the problem is, understand, they are not allowed to reveal the Sharia to a non-Muslim. Sharia is a secret. It's not only a secret, it is a weakness, and they're not allowed to reveal weaknesses which would undermine Islam. So also, they're not qualified to speak on the subject. So they're also not allowed to speak a truth that is harmful to Islam. This is known as slander. A truth that is harmful to a Muslim or harmful to the religion is slander. In the West, slander is telling a lie that smears someone and causes harm. In Islam, slander is telling a truth that causes damage. So there are a lot of issues. Yes?
Yeah. You should do that with Chris, but you guys should also set up a debate about Judaism and the Talmud, because a lot of the members that Chris is leading, and I have nothing against Chris on personal level, but many of the people there see Judaism as the culprit and the enemy, and you, Lloyd, you are an expert on the Talmud. So I think it would be extremely interesting to open it up and debate the verses. So after Islam, please, Chris, if you take our Lloyd, make sure you do the Talmud as well, for the sake of truth and honesty.
I would do the Talmud as well. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, true, exactly. Again, with that, I mean, whether debate is the best option, but yeah, go on.
Forgive me, but maybe we can continue later between the two
Sure.
of you in private message, so we can continue with the lecture.
Yeah,
Okay,
apologies.
continue.
Apologies.
Okay,
No.
so let me jump into the swing of things here. Okay, so I just wanted to bring up that, and let's pick up where we left off last week. So you should be able to see my screen there. Okay, so last week we ended up with the 4 levels, right? So I'm going to go roughly to where we ended up last week. Remember, there are 2 divisions and 4 levels in Islam, right? The second division of Islam, so the first division is just following the rules meant for the peons, your lay Muslim, right? Then you've got your 4 levels. These levels are, the lowest one is the Ibadah, right? Then you have the Ishara, which is meant for the Imams, right? Then you've got the Latifa, and above that, you've got the Haqaiq. We'll get to that in a minute. The Ibadah is the literal language, which is unsuitable for, this is a typo, they made a typo here, which is supposed suitable for exoteric topics. Exoteric means intended for the masses, intended for communication to the general public. So basic Islam is intended for what they call Islam for the masses and for non-Muslims like us, right? This is the literal language, which is in contrast to the coded language of the Ishara. So understand, they speak in code. The scholars speak in code. 2, the Ishara, gesture, sign, indication, symbolism. Understand symbolism. People talk about the Freemasonry and the secret societies who speak in symbols and codes. Well, so does Islam, oddly enough. And the technical meaning of allusion, a hint, allusion, to refer to, implied or indirect reference. It comes from Latin alludere, to play with words. And I've just mentioned how Islam has a specific form of deceitful rhetoric, where they play with words, sophistry. Okay, and in mysticism, and the fact of mysticism comes up constantly in Islam, allusion to the occult, to magic, right, to occult ritual practice, constantly comes up, and for some reason is not explored. But Ishara is the esoteric language of the inexpressible mystical experience. In other words, an experience that is not objective but subjective. They speak of the pre-rational and the post-rational. It is understood outside of the rational mind. Therefore, it's entirely, what's the term that is so popular today, where people, I identify myself as an attack helicopter. I identify as a sheep. I identify as a unicorn. It's exactly the same. There is no difference there. Okay, this is symbolic expression.
Jedi.
Sorry. Okay, fine, Alex, that's a good one. Yep. If you're gonna go all the way, you may as well go all the way. Now, Latifa, again. Latifa, in mysticism, the subtle organ, a theory of levels developed from the time of Najm al-Din, blah, 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 and the mystics of his school. Now, it's interesting that they barely, this is a summary, certainly. We'd have to go to volume 5, 300, and volume 12, page 753 to see more. But what's interesting, the Latifa is also known as the Lataif, right? And this would correlate to the Sophia, to the Greek concept of the Sophia. Now, Sophia, as we know, is not a man, it's a woman. Latifa is an Islamic name for a woman, not a man. See, so the highest level, above the level of your basic imams and so on, once you get to the highest levels of the scholars, the third and fourth levels, suddenly the understanding of Islam, the understanding of Allah, is that Allah is a feminine nature. Allah has a feminine nature. We did show before, we did discuss how the Kaaba and so on is dressed in black, like a woman. There's a vagina in the corner, that little silver vajayjay. Understand? So we've been through that. And so, and if you read the Sufis, you read the scholars, the Sufis being the primary scholars of Islam, the top elite, the top tier of Islamic scholarship, they'll tell you Allah is a woman. Okay? Allah has two natures, but his inner core nature, Allah is a female. Very, very interesting point there. And then you've got the final level, the Hakika, okay, the profound reality. And of course, they speak of the Al-Hakika al-Muhammadiyya, which is the Mohammedan reality, that the substrate of the universe, the thing that, so basically Muhammad's the Holy Spirit and Muhammad is the substrate of the universe. The universe is made from Muhammad. The light of the world, the light of everything is Muhammad. The Ruh Muhammad, the spirit of Muhammad, right? So divine knowledge is transmitted to all the prophets and all the saints through what's called the Ruh Muhammad. So in other words, the Holy Spirit that filled Moses, well, that was Allah taking the spirit of Muhammad and breathing it into Moses. So Muhammad is inside Moses.
Lloyd, can I just interrupt
Yes.
for 1 second?
Go
Obviously,
ahead.
you're in control of the chat here. You got Zubida here. She's actually a Muslim. I don't know if you want to let her on to ask a question. Obviously, you can control it so it's not a shouting match. Is she allowed on to say ask a question or say something at all?
You can ask a question. I mean, go ahead and ask a question.
Yes,
Questions are fine.
I will unmute her. Thank you,
Oh,
Chris.
thank you.
Go ahead, Zubida.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for letting me speak. I don't know what your religion is, whether you're Christian or an atheist, but I've just briefly been listening to some of your claims, and they seem like very wild claims. You're mentioning Sufism, which is not the elitist scholarship within Islam. Majority of Sufis are actually what we would call deviants. Yes, they basically what you're describing is what you would call Sufism. And with all this mysticism, you've described the Kaaba and the black stone as some sort of woman's female parts. Again,
You'd have to
that's
go back a week. You'd have to go back to the previous show to see my discussion on that. Do you have a reference? Do you have an actual technical reference from your major scholars, your major mujtahids, from your four schools? You can point me to verify your claims.
well, I'm not making a claim. I'm refuting yours. You're the one who's made the claims.
No, you're making an assertion. I'm reading directly from the top scholarly
So
works.
which scholar is this? Sorry, you see what you've just read now, Esoteric Islam. Is that your essay, or have you actually got that from what scholar did you get that from?
This is from the primary academic work on Islam in the world. It's the gold standard. This is called the Encyclopedia of Islam.
By who? Sorry.
It is made by a company called Brill, which is about 400 or 500 years old, based in the UK. It's a
So what
collaboration of
company?
thousands.
Sorry,
It's a
sorry, what
collaboration
company?
of Brill. It's a collaboration by thousands of scholars all over the world. At least half of them are Muslim scholars that have contributed to this encyclopedia of Islamic knowledge. It's the gold standard Islamic academic reference worldwide.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to look into that because these claims again, so you've made the
I'm
claim
just
that
reading it off the page. I'm reading it off the page here at the moment. I'm reading things directly off the page. So you're going to have to give me evidence as opposed to just your opinion. Understand? You may not like it, but you're going to have to provide something
it's
more
not about
substantial.
not liking it. It's so there has been a. Sorry, let me just have a look at this.
I have a question for you. So to make
Go
sure
on.
that you know what you know what your Sharia and your fiqh are, correct?
Yes.
So what is the punishment for apostasy within Islam? What is the official within
Well,
the four schools?
we've heard this many times.
No,
So
what
apostasy,
is the punishment for apostasy?
yeah, death. But at the same time,
Correct.
there are conditions to that. So
Where do we find
apostasy
those conditions?
let me speak, please. Apostasy would be classed as treason. Yeah, so it's somebody that is waging war against the caliphate. Somebody that
According to where is that written? Within which manual? Which scholar? Where can I find it?
okay. There's many scholars.
Give me a name. Give me a name. Give me a book so we can verify this. That's your
Okay,
opinion.
well, give me a second. It's not just my opinion, my friend. So give me a second, sorry. So, so there are certain hadiths here that says, this is Sahih hadith.
I'm not interested in hadith. I'm not interested in the Quran. I want to see the fiqh
So,
directly. So let's have a
so
look.
why would
Let's
you not use a hadith? Why would you just rely on scholars?
because the scholars are the scholars are far more qualified than you are. Your scholars speak with ultimate authority within Islam.
But do
That's
they
what we
not
were
refer
told.
to hadiths to get to their judgment?
The final version of Islam, the final interpretation of Islam is by the scholars, and it is found within the Sharia and the fiqh.
Okay, well,
So let's have a look at the world's most famous and the world's most popular Islamic law manual. This is the most commonly used Islamic law manual on the planet. Okay? And it says here, apostasy from Islam, known as Ridda, section 08.0, and it says, whoever voluntarily leaves Islam is killed. Now, notice there is no mention here, and it says there's no indemnity or expiation for killing him. And notice there is no mention of treason, because the whole law of treason falls in a completely different section. So you are conflating two sections that don't belong together. But let's have a look. Let's go have a look and see what the law actually says. Not your opinion, the actual law from the world's most famous, most popular Islamic law manual. Okay, so it says here, apostasy from Islam, ridda. It says leaving Islam is the ugliest form of unbelief, kufr, and the worst. Okay, now it may come through sarcasm, or you might say something. Now, in fact, it says there are any number of ways that cause apostasy. It just says here bluntly, when a person who has reached puberty and is sane voluntarily apostatizes from Islam, he deserves to be killed. No mention of treason. Now,
yeah.
it is optional. You can ask him to repent, but if he refuses, he's immediately killed. Now, all four schools of Islamic jurisprudence say he's killed. Some say he's killed immediately. Some say give him a day. Some will say, oh, give him 3 days. Some will say stone him to death. Some will say chop his head off. Some will say hang him, whatever. They all agree you're killed. Okay? Let's have another look here. There is no indemnity for killing an apostate, since it is someone who deserves to die. Now, if we look through this, we're not going to find, well, he's committed treason. Yes, what he has done is he's broken a contract with Allah, because when you say the Shahada, when you become a Muslim, you basically sell your soul, because the contract, right, when you give your allegiance, this is effectively a contract where you provide assurances to Allah, and you've broken a contract. That's what happens. So do you have any sources or references you can show me? You can
Yeah,
name. I want to name.
so the fact of the matter is, we've already agreed that apostasy results in death in Islam, yeah? But we're not speaking about, again, that I can't give you sources
So
right now,
why
yeah?
should we want Sharia? So why do Muslims want Sharia law for Britain? Why should anyone want this?
No. This is where you're being
Why would
like,
anybody
this is where you're
want?
generalizing, because Muslims do not want Sharia
Why?
law for England. Can I respond, please? You might have a
Oh, but I mean,
minority of people.
why are we seeing all of these discussions about they want to demand Sharia law? They don't want man-made law. Muslims want Sharia law.
But
Now,
that's a minority. As long as the laws that you're
that
living by are
minority
not
is
going to
acting in the
contradict.
doctrine. That minority is acting
Can I
under the
respond,
doctrine
please?
of
You've asked me a
azima.
question. Can I respond,
What is the
please?
difference between azima and rukhsa?
Okay,
That is an
you're not allowing
important
me. You're
minority.
making claims. You're not allowing me. I've just listened to what you've had to say, right? So if you could, give me the respect to
No, you're
respond, if you
giving me
don't
an
mind.
opinion. I want to know.
If you don't mind, sir. If you don't mind, sir.
No,
So,
Just
if,
Harry, just pause a second there. Just pause a second there. Would you just put it on mute for a second? So I'm going to show here. This is again from the world's most famous, the world's most popular Islamic law manual. This is the section of lying. So Chris, earlier you asked me about lying. You said you spoke about what was it, taqiyya? Now, taqiyya is just one of many. It's one of the minor forms of lying within Islam. So there's an actual chapter on lying within Islam, section R 8.0 within this manual. And it says here, there's a section on permissible lying, section R 8.2. And then we have in circumventing those, forbidding the permissible. Now, what I am doing right now is I am attempting to forbid the permissible. It is always permissible to spread Islam. Now, I am forbidding that. I am working against that. And Muslims are allowed to lie to circumvent those forbidding the permissible. In other words, they're allowed to lie to prevent me from doing what I'm doing. Notice in Islam there is obligatory lying, okay? And then there is giving a misleading impression. So let's continue. Let's have a look and see what the Sharia in this reference, in this compendium, tells us. Okay. Now, permissible lying. Let's have a brief look at the chapter on permissible lying. So the scholars, the mujtahids, don't forget, these are the absolute scholars of Islam. So Muhammad permitted untruth for three things: war, settling disagreements, and a man lying to his wife or his wife lying to the husband. Fantastic stuff, okay? Now, Islam is permanently at war. We did the section on jihad, and we explained Islam is permanently at war with the rest of the world. The lands that Islam controls are the Dar al-Islam, and the land outside of those borders is the Dar al-Harb, the house of war. We are always under threat of a holy war against Islam. That small minority, those are the people acting under the doctrine of Azima, who are correctly following Islam to the T, following the Sharia to the letter. Now, of course, they mention here settling disagreements. Now, would you say, Harry, that myself and this woman disagree?
There is a disagreement.
So, for the purposes of settling disagreements, Muslims are allowed to lie. So this is an explicit statement that lying is permissible for a given interest. Okay, one of those is to settle disagreements. Now, Ghazali, who is the #1 scholar after Muhammad himself, says speaking is a means to achieve objectives. And he says when it is possible to achieve such an aim by lying, not by telling the truth, it is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible. So in Islamic law, it is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible. And when the purpose of lying is to circumvent someone who's preventing one from doing something permissible, then of course it is permissible to lie and obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. So Muslims are obligated to lie. But now, it is not unlawful to lie when any of these aims can only be attained through lying. It is religiously more precautionary in all cases to employ words that give a misleading impression. So, does that sound like deceit to you, Harry?
Yes. But in what way can she present her case if there is a debate? How would she present it in a way that
presenting an opinion? I would want references. I want to know references. I'm not interested in the Quran. I'm not interested in Hadith. The final distillation, the final product of Islam is the Sharia. It is the fiqh. Okay? This is one of the finest legal manuals in the world. It's not the most detailed, it's not even the most complete. There are others that are larger that the scholars utilize in the courts and so on in their rulings. This one is the most common because it's one volume, it's easily transportable, and of course it has a little bit of everything. So she would need to give me references from the Sharia itself, from the laws of the Mujtahids Mutlaq, the absolute scholars, the perfect scholars, the infallible scholars who can never be wrong, wrote these. So I want to get proof from the scholars, not from her opinion. I'm reading this off the page. I'm not making this up.
Should we unmute her to see if she has
Yep.
such an argument
Yep.
to provide?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, can I respond, please? So what he's trying to say is he's trying to make an argument against Islam. The foundations of Islam are the Quran, and then the next source is the Hadith. He's skipping the Quran, which is our holy book. He's skipping the Hadith and running straight to scholars. Scholars can make mistakes. Scholars are...
Which page of the Quran?
Can I finish, please, sir? You can't. Why, sir? If you're having a debate with somebody, you can't just cut them. I've allowed you to speak. You should allow me to.
Zubida,
Like,
one second, guys. Zubida, he doesn't have a debate. This is his show. This is his lecture. So
oh, it's his lecture.
Yeah. So if you have something to say, please respond to his.
I am responding, but I'm being cut by the guy. So what I'm saying to you is, if you want to critique Islam, you have to start with the foundations, which is the Quran and the Hadith. Scholars did not even live at the time of the Prophet. So how can the scholars? Wow, this guy.
Your Mujtahid's Mutlaq. Your absolute
sir, the Bible says that you should
throw.
The Bible says that you should execute. The Bible says, "Happy shall be he that taketh and dashes thy little ones against the stones." The Bible says that you should dash kids. This guy's a clown, bro.
So look, the point is now she's saying that, look, certainly the Quran started Islam, okay? So Muhammad got this revelation, it was written into the Quran. And then, of course, the Quran is incomplete because Muhammad's only mentioned 4 times. Jesus is mentioned like 40 times, right? So now you've got Muhammad who's barely mentioned in this book that's supposedly by Muhammad. And then also, ask any Muslim on which page, which chapter, which verse, which surah, which ayah do we find how to perform the prayers within Islam? You know, the 5 daily prayers. How do we do that? The way you follow it in the mosque. Where is that written in the Quran? You're not going to find it. Show me all 5 prayers mentioned in the Quran. You're not going to find them. Show me how to perform a marriage out of the Quran. Doesn't exist. Not in the book, because the Quran is incomplete. The hadith, scattered, thousands of them, all over the place. All of this was collected into the Sharia and the fiqh. Now, of course, she's mentioned the Quran and the hadith. She's forgotten to mention the fact that there is what they call the ijtihad, reasoning. There is qiyas, analogy, which the scholars have to use. How do we apply this law to the civilization of Islam? How do we apply this in daily life of people? And then, of course, the final of all of that, the final summation of all of that is called the ijma. The ijma is the consensus of the scholars, which is obligatory, absolute, can never be abrogated, is not wrong, is perfect. So she forgets the ijma. Now, for instance, if we want to go, let's have a look at prayer. Actually, let's have a look here, because you're not going to find this in the Quran. She's never going to be able to give it to me. Look here, this is the Islamic law. So let's go to the chapter on prayer in this book, chapter F. Prayer starts on page 101 and ends on page 220 for daily prayer. 119 pages of very, very detailed discussion about prayer. Okay, which you will not find in the Quran. Doesn't exist, because the Quran is incomplete. So the Quran is effectively superseded by the ijma of the scholars, and the ijma, the consensus of the scholars, the final consensus, the final interpretation is in these texts of the Sharia. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Thank you very much for your time, but honestly, you're going to have to do a lot better than this woman.
So 1 second, Lloyd. She is
Yeah.
insisting on the Quran because that's a way to deceive and escape the ugliness of the Sharia. Is that
Correct.
yours?
Correct. Which is a very, very common trait. Yes.
I understand. Can you please show us anything that shows that Sharia is the ultimate reference for Islam today, like the final say?
Yes, I can. I did show you in a couple of shows ago. We did discuss it, but let me go.
Yeah, just for the audience, so they can see it in front of their eyes that the Sharia is the ultimative, how to say it, like ultimate reference.
Pardon me. So yeah, let me just get that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so first there are a number of warrants, what they call warrants for the authenticity of this book. Okay? The first one I'll go to. There's several within the book. This is one of these. Okay. Now, it says here, from an academic point of view, it says this translation is superior to anything produced by Orientalists. Those would be Western academics who studied Islam in the 19th century onwards, right? In the way of translations of major Islamic works, okay? And this will provide a sound understanding of sacred law. And this is from this guy who's president of the International Institute of Islamic Thought, or Muslim Brotherhood Front, member of the Islamic Fiqh Academy at Jeddah. Okay, Jeddah's next to Mecca. I've been to Jeddah. And president of the Fiqh Council of North America. So I'm assuming this guy has a few qualifications in Islam. Okay. Now, what is more important than that is this one. Al-Azhar University is the preeminent Islamic seminary on earth. It is the most important one on the planet. It produces the most highly trained Islamic scholars in the world. And it says here, we certify that the above-mentioned translation corresponds to the Arabic original and conforms to the practice and faith of the Orthodox Sunni community. There is no objection to circulating it and printing it, right? Okay, and this is from Al-Azhar, and here we go. And now I need to find the references on the references that speak about the sacred law. Okay, now, a couple of things. First of all, the superiority of the learned Muslim over the devotee. She's a devotee. She's a lay Muslim at the Ibaha level. The scholars, the superiority of the learned Muslim, the scholars, over the devotee is as Muhammad's superiority over the least of you. So Muhammad said, and she loves the hadith, so here's a hadith mentioned in the Sharia, the superiority of the learned Muslim is as Muhammad's superiority over you. So the scholars, okay, the superiority of the learned Muslim over the devotee is like the superiority of the moon over all the stars. And the learned are the heirs of the prophets. Is she an heir of the prophets? I doubt that. But apparently those scholars are. There's going to be a lot more in it that I need to mention that I'm just trying to think of the references so that I don't.
So
And
basically, a debate is not possible between you and a Muslim because they are going to take you all the time to the Quran and do their cherry picking, and you claim that the ultimate reference is the Sharia, and they are avoiding the Sharia.
yeah, okay. So look, but yes, correct. Now let me go through this. Okay. Now they mentioned here that the basic obligation of Islam is to believe in everything brought by the messenger with absolute conviction, free of doubt. Okay, whoever does this is not obliged to learn the evidences of the scholastic theologians. So Muslims are to have full faith in Islam with no evidence, without doubt. The Prophet did not require of anyone anything but what we have just mentioned: complete faith with no evidence, without doubt. It says here, what befits the common people and the vast majority of those learning or possessing sacred knowledge is to refrain from discussing the subtleties of scholastic theologies, because corruption, difficult to eliminate, will find its way into their basic convictions. It is fitter for them to confine themselves to contentment with the above mentioned certainty. Okay, now, but I need to get another set of references. So let me find, there's a couple of references. Okay, now also you have to note here that what a scholar needs to know are those verses which supersede previously revealed Quranic verses. This is called Nasikh wa Mansukh, the abrogating and the abrogated. The Quran is abrogated. Newer verses cancel out older verses. Now, the hadith are the same. Newer hadith cancel out older hadith. They replace them, right? So a scholar has to know. Now, also, newer hadith verses also cancel out older Quran verses, and newer Quran verses also cancel out older hadith narrations. Now, the problem is this is a complete mess. So a scholar needs to know what supersedes what, and those mansukh which are superseded by later verses. So they need to know that. Now, but there's more that I need to get to here. So let me find the Mujtahid's Mutlaq. We need to get into, okay. They speak here of absolute experts in Islamic legal reasoning called the Mujtahid's Mutlaq, such as the four scholars who founded the four schools, Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, and Ahmad. Right? Those are the absolute scholars, the Mujtahid's Mutlaq. They can make no mistake. If we go there, so hold on, but I need to find a specific reference that I wasn't thinking of right now. Contravene, yeah, that's the word I need here. So,
Lloyd, is there?
okay,
Do
here we
you
go.
have?
This is what I need. Yeah.
Yeah, can you please find the patience, maybe for 5 minutes maximum, to allow her to speak? Because people in the chat and in private are telling me that we should give her a fair chance. This is the first time that we have a Muslim who is actually trying to make his case. Now, I understand there is a huge gap here because she wants to focus on the Quran, and you want.
So look, let me make this point because you asked about this. Now, it says here, when the four integrals of consensus exist, now understand the ijma. Okay, let me look this up first of all. So let me show you a couple of references that are relevant here. So I need to set the stage here. So we need to go to the ijma. The ijma, it says here, in law, it is the third, but in practice, the most important of the sources of legal knowledge. This is the unanimous agreement of the Islamic community. They mean the scholars here, on a regulation imposed by Allah. Technically, ijma is the unanimous doctrine and opinion of the recognized religious authorities. She is not a recognized religious authority. So the ijma, the consensus, right, is the most important of the legal sources of authority within Islam. Now let's go. The ruling agreed upon, right, the ijma ruling, is an authoritative part of sacred law that is obligatory to obey and not lawful to disobey. Nor can mujtahids of a succeeding era make the thing an object of new ijtihad or new reasoning, new personal reasoning, because the ruling on it, verified by scholarly consensus, the ijma, is an absolute legal ruling which does not admit of being contravened or annulled. Now understand, the Quran has been, various portions, in fact, the majority of the Quran has been annulled. Okay? They are mansukh. They have been cancelled. They've been abrogated. So the Quran has largely been abrogated. Much of it is irrelevant. It's now been discarded. Much of the hadith have been discarded. what is relevant within the Quran and what is relevant within the Hadith is contained within the Sharia and the Fiqh, right? These and that now is the ijma. The scholars have figured out these are the only relevant texts. This is what remains. This is what survives. After all the cancellations, this is what survives. And so the Quran can be cancelled. However, the Sharia can never be cancelled. The Sharia is permanent. Understand? So the proof of the legal authority of the scholarly consensus is that Allah ordered the believers in the Quran to obey him and his messenger, and he too obeyed them to obey those, he ordered them to obey those of authority, saying, you who believe, obey Allah and obey the Prophet and those of authority among you. I am reading you the words of those of authority in Islam, such that when those of authority and legal expertise, the mujtahids, agree upon a ruling, it is obligatory in the very words of the Quran to follow them and carry out their judgment. Allah threatens those who oppose the messenger and follow other than the believer's way. Whoever controverts the messenger after guidance has become clear, he will go to hell. Does that make that clear? Does that clarify that point, Harry?
It does. But maybe there is there is echo. Maybe we can give her a chance to try to show us some evidence that what you say about the Sharia as the ultimate reference is not true.
This is what I'm saying. I'm reading the Sharia too. This is what the Sharia says about the Sharia. So,
but maybe she has a trick and she can show that somehow, because otherwise you're talking about two different things. You're focusing on the Sharia, she's focusing on the Quran, and there is no debate. But
show me where the 5 daily prayers are mentioned. Show me where the marriage ceremony is in the Quran. Show me where where Quran teaches how to perform the 5 daily prayers. Doesn't exist. Why would we go to the Quran if the important basic functions of Islam are not found in it?
I understand that, but can we, for the sake of, can we allow her to try to respond? A little bit of patience so that we can have...
She's going to start throwing her scholars and her sources under the bus, and I'm wasting my time. Understand? Because she's not an ultimate authority. I'm respectfully going to their top authority, their very best Islamic legal sources, and reading them.
I fully understand your position, and you know that I support it, but unfortunately we don't have Muslims on the chat, so for the sake of fairness, I want to allow her that if you can find the patience, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try. Be a little patient so she can finish her argument and then corner her.
Okay.
Go ahead, Zubaida.
Let me speak. So the fact of the matter is, again, this person is jumping from our foundation, which is the Quran, jumping from Hadith and going straight to modern scholars who, again, yes, they have done good works and they have studied fiqh and tried to, they've done ijtihad in order to understand and interpret the Quran. But these are people who did not live at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. These are people that came years later. So what do scholars use as their base to interpret Islam? The Quran and the Sunnah. And there is also a difference of opinion amongst scholars as well. So the fact that he's acting like the scholar's statement is a general statement, there will be...
Okay, what is the name for the prayer? What is the name for the doctrine of difference in
Islam? Please, sir?
No, since you're so all-knowing, what is the name
I'm not
for the
all-knowing.
doctrine of difference?
You sound very emotional, sir. You have to allow
What is the name for the doctrine of difference within Islam?
You've made a claim against my religion, and I'm addressing that claim, right? If
No,
you're a true person, you wouldn't be
claims
scared
about
of my
religion.
response,
So
would you?
What is the
You wouldn't
name
be scared of
for the
my response.
No, what is the name? You mentioned there's a difference. In fact, Islam has a name. It actually has a name and a doctrine
does
describing...
Islam not have 4 madhabs? Does Islam not have 4 madhabs?
What do they call the differences? What do they call? Are they different religions? Are they 4 separate religions? Are they 4 different religions?
They're different aqidas. Yes, they're different aqidas, right? So you've got
Is that
4 main
relevant?
scholars. You've got 4 main scholars in Islam, and most of them, they mostly agree on most things, but there are differences in opinions on these 4 scholars. The Muslim world takes from each of these 4 scholars.
Those things that undermine the 4 schools and
can I just address the first point, please? Right?
No, you're making an assertion without the difference, the doctrine, just so that everyone knows, because I happen to know a lot more about this than you do. You are speaking in very general terms, making assertions. The doctrine of difference in Islam is called ikhtilaf. Now, if you knew what you were talking about, you would actually know these terms, and you don't.
Are you? Okay? I do know these terms, but I don't need someone like you to educate
the main scholar.
based on your own biases.
What is the name of the main scholar in
At the moment. That's not the main point I'm addressing.
Between the 4 schools. Who is the scholar that harmonized the differences between the four schools and explained them? And what was the name of the book that he wrote?
I'm not answering that
Please tell
question.
me.
I'm answering the first
No, because
question.
you don't
So the
know,
first
because you're
question is, this
ignorant
person is
of the
jumping to
answer.
scholars. He doesn't take from the Quran. Now he said, how do you know how to pray from the Quran? The Quran has many explicit verses in how to tell people to pray from, even wudu', how you wash yourself. Yeah. So I'll just give you a couple of verses here. Yeah. In Surah Al-Muzammil, and we made them leaders guided by a command, and we inspired them doing good deeds, establishing of prayer and giving of zakat, and they were worshippers of us. And enjoin prayer upon your family and people, and be steadfast therein. And we ask you for provision, we provide for you, and the best outcome is those of
That's
righteousness.
fantastic. So show
I'm
me
not finished. I'm not.
how
Wow,
do you do the
wow.
prayer? How do you learn it in the madrasa? When they teach young Muslims, show me the instructions on how to do the
Okay.
prayer.
So let me finish. So Allah sets the foundation and tells us what to do, which is prayer. The Prophet, peace be upon him, shows us how to pray through the hadith, where the hadiths explicitly tell you how to wash yourself. There are verses in the Quran which also tell you how to wash
Really?
yourself.
So I mean, the
So,
scholars just read
so
these
the Quran
hadith.
doesn't
They
say how
have
to do
different
wudu.
books.
So the
So
Quran
the
doesn't tell you
scholars
how to do
never.
wudu.
Please
So
answer Lloyd questions as much as you can.
let
I
me
am,
see.
but he keeps cutting me.
No, you're making very general statements, which shows that you're not as knowledgeable of your own deen as you should be. You don't even know what the word deen is.
That's according to you. You've obviously come with your own bias because you have some sort
The
of agenda
difference,
to warn
the
people
doctrine
about
of
Islam.
difference between
We
Islam is
don't really
called
care, to
ikhtilaf.
be honest.
The doctrine of difference in Islam is called ikhtilaf. The main scholar who harmonized the differences between the four schools is called Shar'ani. He wrote a book called the Mizan al-Kubra, okay, the Great Balance, the Supreme Scales. And what it shows is that 75% of the doctrine between the four schools is identical. Where they differ, the 25% that is different, is simply cosmetic issues which do not affect fundamental beliefs or doctrine. Where they differ is on irrelevancies. Where they do agree is on all the fundamentals. So you see, while they might differ, see, the one guy might pray with his hands up here, the other guy prays with his hands down here. Does that affect the doctrine? No.
Yes. Tell you why.
So
Because there are
you see,
scholars who say you're allowed to rebel against Muslim rulers, and there are scholars who say you are not allowed to rebel against
that's a
Muslim
nice opinion.
rulers.
That's a
So
lovely opinion. Now,
there are
listen,
scholars who have different political fatwas, which does
now,
affect the Muslim community. There are extreme
so
scholars who say yes, you should go and kill, and there are scholars who will say actually no, we shouldn't go and
that's
start war.
called
So again, you're
azima.
wrong.
That's called azima, and all of those are
So
justified within the
why are you
Sharia.
using scholars who all have difference of opinions rather than the Quran, which has one opinion, which is the Quran only? Using
So you're
men
saying
who
that
have
every
different
Muslim interprets
aqidas, who
it.
have different mindsets. Sorry, can I finish, please? You're
So
using scholars, which there are difference of opinions. Like I said, there are
you need
scholars
to
who will say it's
consult a
okay to
scholar.
wage war. There are scholars who will say it's not okay to wage war. So these are men. These are teachers who some can have their own biases based on where they're from. Because the Saudi
What is
scholars
the
are a bit
definition of jihad? Please
the
give me the
Saudi.
legal.
Why are you
Give me
asking
the
me
legal.
101
Give me the
questions? Let me
legal.
answer one
Give me
question
the
at a
legal
time, my friend.
definition of jihad.
Can I answer one
You're
question
making
at a time?
assertions.
I'm
Give me
already
the legal
breaking down your
definition of jihad.
foundations. You are using
No, you're
scholars to
not.
refute Islam.
Uh,
Yes, I am. You
Harry,
are using scholars
put
to
on mute,
refute
please.
Islam, and scholars all
Put on
have
mute,
different.
please. So look, remember I mentioned that Islam is a very specific method of debate. Okay, if we dig deep into what I showed earlier called the ilm al-badi, right? They have a very specific method of doing things. Now, what she's doing falls under a doctrine called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. Now, within the Sharia, because it comes from a hadith, but remember, the Sharia is a compilation of all of these by Islam's best minds. She's not Islam's best mind, I'll tell you that. So, what it states is that a Muslim, anything a Muslim says, right, counts against him and not for him, unless that Muslim is commanding the right and forbidding the wrong, right? In other words, unless they are attempting to promote Islam, in other words, specifically promote the Sharia, enforce the Sharia, because the Sharia counts against non-Muslims too, must be enforced against non-Muslims too. So she has to enforce the Sharia on non-Muslims, and she has to make sure that no one contravenes the Sharia, right? Which I am doing. So she's commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. So understand, it's wonderful sophistry, it's fantastic opinion, and unfortunately, she doesn't know any of the basics of Islam. She's making broad assertions. I don't have time for that. I want to know if she doesn't know, right? She's speaking of difference. Well, difference is called ikhtilaf. It's a doctrine. There are scholars that actually has identifiable doctrine. Does this doctrine violate the Quran? Yes or no? Well, if it's very much drawn from the Quran and the Sunnah, then obviously it's in very much in correlation. So if the scholars are wrong, she needs to show me specifically where and why. But yeah, but all of this is what the Islamic scholars have written. None of it violates the Quran, to my knowledge, and it's perfectly in tune with it. And if every Muslim reads the Quran and makes up his own mind what Islam means, right? How can she claim that she's right and anyone else is wrong? Because if everyone reads the Quran and makes up their own mind, invents their own religion, how can anyone be wrong? So if one scholar claims that, well, yes, you can go to war, and another scholar says, no, you can't, well, how can you say they're wrong? Where is that consensus that tells you, well, here are the rules, here are the specifics, here's when and how, here's why? That's called the ijma, right? That consensus, that final understanding. So anyway, Harry, any comment from you? Because really, I know I don't have a lot of patience.
Yeah, you will. I just want to try to understand. Her position is that the scholar themselves, the modern ones, are not to be followed when it doesn't fit with her understanding of the Quran. So basically, she is eliminating the importance of the entire Sharia. Isn't that
Of
so?
course, I have to. Because the Sharia is a secret. As a non-Muslim, we are not allowed to possess anything that contains even a little bit of the Quran. It's illegal for us to possess this kind of literature. It's illegal to make it public. Right? She has to resist that. She has to apply this doctrine of commanding the right, forbidding the wrong. So this is how she earns reward with Allah. Understand? This actually earns a reward, because everything she says will count against her. Allah will count it against her because she's not perfect. But now she's doing something for the benefit of Allah, so she earns reward in heaven with Allah.
How do you deal with debates with other people, with scholars? I suppose that they do the same thing. They go to the Quran, they completely ignore the Sharia. So how do you
Correct.
like catch them, and what is the punchline that you can give our audience and to prove that the Sharia is the only way to go and everything else is just, I know you showed it before, but when you are debating with those people, how do you eventually lead the conversation to a point where they have to admit that the Sharia is the only authority? Is that even possible?
Why would the world's greatest Islamic seminary say that this thing is authentic Sunni Islam and there's no issues with making it public? Now, why is she attacking me for reading what is written here rather than going to Al-Azhar and saying, you guys are incompetent, you guys don't know Islam? Why would you allow this book to become the most popular Islamic law reference in the world, in millions of homes, misleading millions upon millions of Muslims? For this book was written in what? This book is 900 years old, right? So for 900 years, this book has been, apparently, according to her, misleading Muslims and lying. Why doesn't she have a problem with that? Why does she have a problem with me reading what's in it? Let's have a look here. For instance, this is disgusting. It is recommended to put a barrier at least 32 centimeters high in front of oneself when performing the prayer. Okay, that's nice. Okay, so that's in the prayer. Now, this is, understand, you saw there's pages and pages, 119 pages of Islamic law on how to pray. Right? And these are things that Muslims do in the mosque. Believe me, they follow all of this stuff. Now, here is when full Islamic law, ISIS was doing this. The Taliban does this. If someone tries to pass between oneself and the barrier, it is recommended to gently push him back. If he persists, one may push him back as hard as necessary, as one would an attacker. If the other person were to die as a result, one would not be subject to retaliation or have to pay an indemnity to his kin. That's what Islam teaches in terms of prayer. You can kill someone who walks in front of you while you're praying, and it's just too bad. Now, this is Islamic law. Now, if this book is teaching this and this is wrong, why is she telling me this? Why is she not going to Al-Azhar? Why are they not burning Al-Azhar down? Why are the top scholars, literally the very best scholars in Islam in the world, permitting this, publishing this, saying that, yeah, that's good stuff, that's regular, that's proper Islam?
Can we allow her to answer only that question, nothing else, if she's willing to deal with that question alone? Zubaida, this is the question if you're willing to answer only that. Zubaida.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, but please respond to his statement
so the claim
here.
that you have to kill somebody if they interrupt your prayer.
That wasn't the question.
Not about that, Zubaida. Not about that.
So what's his question?
Please ask her the specific question about why the Sharia should be the ultimate reference, and why she is not going to attack all those scholars like you said it. I cannot do it as
This
well
is
as
the
you did.
most famous Sharia law manual on the planet. It's the most popular, the most read, the most owned, the most sold Sharia manual on earth. It's in millions and millions and millions of homes. It is endorsed by the finest, most prestigious, most respected and authoritative Islamic seminary in the world, Al-Azhar University in Cairo. Now, why are you upset with me reading from this rather than you going and tearing down Al-Azhar University? Because this book is, 900 years old? This stuff has been in here. They found no reason to change any of it. And so it's misleading Muslims. Now, why are you not going out there and explaining that your scholars are wrong and your scholars are liars and your scholars have misled millions of Muslims? Go and attack Al-Azhar. Why take exception with me? Why are your scholars wrong?
So can I respond, please?
Yeah, let her
Right.
answer,
So
please, Lloyd.
considering that you are Jewish and you have fundamental
He's
laws
not
in your
Jewish.
religion,
He's not Jewish.
oh, he's not
He's a
Jewish.
Christian. You
Oh,
just
he's a
made
Christian. Okay, so that's even more problematic. So considering you're a Christian, where there are laws in your own Bible which say killing of children and smashing their heads for babies.
Can you please answer the
Jesus did not
question
come.
that he gave you,
So we have
Zubaida?
to say.
Don't attack
I
his
am answering.
religion.
I'm answering. Don't attack
No,
his
telling
religion,
us
but he's
that he's a
indoctrinating
Christian.
people about mine. Does that make sense?
No, he's giving reference non-stop for
Okay.
12
Right.
hours
So he's not giving
about your
context.
faith.
He's not giving. Okay, let me
He's
respond,
giving a
please,
lot of
because
context.
this is the
Please
thing.
answer the question
I am answering
specifically.
the question. I'm answering the question my own way, please. So if you have a moral foundation where you disagree with the Sharia and you disagree with certain implementations in the Sharia, then therefore you should also disagree with your own religion. This is a bias and a double standards, because he speaks about the Sharia being, in a way which is not fit for human beings, but yet he follows a scripture which also have questionable and controversial
Sorry, I missed that.
verses
I was asleep there
about
for a
Jewish
second. What
kingship.
was
That wasn't the
that?
question.
So this person obviously has an agenda. He's not genuine about his
He
concerns,
has
because
an
if he is,
agenda. He's showing to us systematically that the Islam is insane. So he was able to provide evidence and
so is
scriptures
it
for 12
insane that
hours.
Christianity says that Eve is the reason
You can
women
as a
have pain?
speaker. 1 second. You can come as a speaker and speak about Christianity some other
No,
day.
I
Right now,
don't, because I
we
don't
ask.
care about Christianity. That's the thing. I don't see Christianity as a threat.
So
I don't see
answer
any other
about
religion
the
as a threat.
Sharia.
So the
Specifically
Sharia
answer his
is a
question.
law. The Sharia is a law by God, which is derived from the Quran and the Hadith for mankind. Whether he likes it or not, this is what Muslims believe in. It's not going to affect you the way that you said, oh, Muslims want to take over and make England a Sharia country. If Muslims can't even establish Sharia in their own countries, what makes you think they want to do it in Britain? The fact of the matter is you're fear mongering and you obviously have an agenda. And again, if you're against certain laws when it comes to capital punishment, then you need to look at your Bible. Priests and popes actively burnt people at the stake who went against the church, who were heretics not long ago in Britain. Homosexuality was a crime under the Buggery Act. So the fact of the matter is
Okay, thank
Christianity
you.
and Islam are fundamentally the same. And obviously you guys you're scared of opponents. This is why I'm here, because
Okay,
you
so
cannot answer my
Christianity
question.
is also shit, no problem. But right now we are discussing Islam, and you have to provide evidence why the Sharia is not the ultimate reference. You said earlier that the scholars, the modern scholars, are not relevant, or something to that degree.
No, they are. Can I respond that? Okay, fine. So again, the Sharia is derived from the Quran. So for instance, the Quran talks about 80 lashes. And again, the Sharia is not only compromise of capital punishment. Sharia also compromises divorce. It compromises inheritance. It is a law which compromises everybody's daily life. The part that you're focusing on is capital punishment when it comes to crime or punishments. For instance, chopping of the hands. Again, there's a context to that. You don't just chop somebody's hand off because they stole an apple. We're speaking about a malicious thief who breaks into somebody's home, burglaring and entering, and the amount that they
Give me
have.
the law. That's your opinion. Give me the law. Give me the actual fatwa. Give me the actual ruling, the
Well, you know
ijma
this, don't you,
fatwa.
sir? You don't know the law about chopping of the hands?
Okay, let's take 1 second, Lloyd. Let's take one extreme example that you can show us, and then let's give her a chance to deal with it. Find the most disgusting one you can find.
Let's have a look at. She spoke about divorce. She just brought up divorce. So let's look at divorce and marriage, especially divorce. And it says here, whenever a free woman asks to marry a suitable or suitable, okay, the guardian must marry her to the suitor, whether she's a virgin or non-virgin, and whether she is prepubescent or not. So within Islam, we see here within the Sharia, prepubescent marriage is legalized.
So where did you say that in the Quran? Sorry.
Prepubescent marriage is legalized.
So
now,
the Quran says prepubescent. No, the Quran does not say prepubescent. Sorry.
You just seem to have forgotten about your sunnah. Didn't Muhammad marry a 6-year-old?
Does the Quran say prepubescent?
Your prophet, your sunnah, is also unfortunately legal You just mentioned earlier the Quran and the Sunnah, right? The Hadith. So Muhammad
You've
married a
made the claim.
6-year-old.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now let's continue with your Sharia. So let's have a look here. Now they speak of here in this in this ruling, the divorce of a wife who is prepubescent. Very interesting. Let's continue. Let's see where this leads. So Quran 65:4, which is the verse which talks about the waiting period for a wife who is too young to have her periods. Let's see what it says. So within the Sharia, it explains that ruling, and it says in section N9.2, a waiting period is obligatory for a woman divorced after intercourse, right? Divorced after she's had sex with her husband. Whether the husband and wife are prepubescent, have reached puberty, or one has and the other has not. Intercourse means copulation, it states here. So in other words, this explains Quran 65:4, and it says, if the woman is prepubescent and you had sex with her when she's prepubescent, because in Islam there is no lower age limit for
The Quran
sex.
does not say prepubescent. You have to bring the actual verse.
Now, yeah, I understand, but now the Sharia happens to say this. Now, why don't you go and speak to Al-Azhar and explain to them about the Sunnah? Besides, Muhammad married a 6-year-old, right?
Okay.
Muhammad
Can I respond?
Muhammad stooped her when she was very, very young. So now we can go to other Islamic
Can I
manuals and
respond?
we
You've
can
just
have a look.
made a claim.
Lloyd, can
Can I
she
make a
respond,
response?
please?
Yeah.
No,
So
she can go
again,
ahead.
you're in Islam, when you get married to somebody, they have to be mentally, physically, and emotionally ready. Now,
Can you show me the
1,400 years
rulings
ago,
in law?
can I finish, please? 1,400 years ago, the time was completely different. The customs and the traditions were completely different. You can go 400 years ago here in Britain, and you would have monarchs marrying girls which you would deem to be children. In Italy, the age of consent is 14. The age of consent is Britain in 16. If you had sex with a 14-year-old in Italy, it would be completely fine. But if you did the same in England, you'd be classed as a paedophile. So the fact of the matter is, you cannot use 1,400 years ago, 7th century Arabian customs to make some sort of claim
I
that
have
the
a
Prophet was
question. Is
immoral.
everything Muhammad did perfect and Sunnah?
You're jumping from question to question. Can I at least
No,
answer
it's
one
relevant.
without being
Is everything
interrupted?
Muhammad did Sunnah? Because if Muhammad did it, it's Sunnah for all time. Muhammad is the
No.
perfect
Okay, let me
man,
ask you
correct?
this then. The Prophet Muhammad SAW married Khadija when he was 25 and 40. How come a lot of Arab
We're
men
not
go,
talking about her. We're
Muslim men?
talking about Aisha.
Hold
Muhammad
on. You've
married
just
her.
said, you've just made the claim that everything the Prophet did is Sunnah. We should copy it. The Prophet married a woman 15 years older than him. Majority of Muslim men do not marry women
He also
15 years
married a
older than
young
him.
girl that was. He also
Okay,
married a young girl that was
and how
47 years younger than him.
how many Muslim men marry girls of that age in this day and age? Sorry.
Apparently, quite a number do.
No,
So
no,
let's
no,
have a
no,
look
not quite
here.
a lot. The examples you can use are places like Afghanistan, which is a war-torn country. They're not doing it
Which
because it's
happens to
Sunnah.
be under
They're
Sharia
doing it.
law, under the
Excuse me, let
group
me
called the
finish. Let me finish.
Taliban,
The
as you
reasons
might
why you'll find
remember.
child marriage in Muslim countries is not because the Prophet did it. It's because of poverty and people are selling their children to older men for income. It's got nothing to do with the religion, right? So the fact of the
Could
matter
you
is, if
just
you want to
put
look
her on
at real
mute again, Harry?
paedophilia, if you want to
Just
look
put
at
her
real
on
paedophilia,
Zubaida,
mute
I have
again.
to stop you for a second. We will
to
come
be
back
honest,
to you.
this guy's a waste of time. I apologize.
No. Now you
So
just
okay,
insulted him.
so I'm gonna bring this up again. Okay, so this I'm gonna go to. So this book here, what I've got here, what you're looking at here. Let me do this first. Okay, this book here, what you see here. I just need to go. What you see here, I'm going to zoom in. This is one of, okay, there are 4 major legal manuals still in use in, for instance, places like Pakistan today. Now, specifically referencing Pakistan, there are 4 main Islamic legal texts used in their court system today. One of those is this one called the Digest of Muhammadan Law. The first one is called the Hedaya, right? I'm not going to go into their Hedaya today, but their Hedaya corroborates all of this. Pardon me, but let's have a look and see what this Digest of Muhammadan Law says. And it says here, right, to corroborate this, when a man has had sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 9 years, right, when a man has had sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 9 years and has ruptured the parts, it is unlawful for him to have further connection with her. Okay, so when you've destroyed her vagina because she's 5 years old or 3 years old or 2 years old or 6 months old, and you're a 40-year-old man and you've had sex with that 2-month-old, 6-month-old, 9-year-old, 5-year-old girl, it is unlawful for you to abuse her again. But she is not released from her ties if connected with him by marriage or slavery. So in other words, you can marry her under the age of 9. Now, Pakistan is, I believe, not a country at war, okay? Neither is Bangladesh and other places where these laws are in effect. right? Now, of course, Sharia needs to be implemented at the end of time, because once Islam has taken over the world, full Sharia will be implemented. Until then, Muslims have to do as much as possible. Now, it says here, if no rupture, if her vagina has not been torn, what they mean specifically, and you'd have to read a reference called the Bahishti Zever, which discusses this in horrific detail. Basically, adult male takes his penis, puts it into a 6-month-old child's vagina, rips it down to the anus, and splits the skin between the two. Okay, that's what they mean here. If no rupture has taken place, the prohibition is not incurred according to the most valid opinion. In other words, if no rupture has occurred, if you don't break her vagina and tear it down to the anus, go ahead, shtup away. This is the law. Now, of course, she is unfortunately very embarrassed about discussing the fact that Muhammad married a 6-year-old, right? And this is very much accepted. This is very much the case with all of these hadith that you mentioned. Okay, this is very much the case that he slept with, and it's just all over the place. If you go to the hadith, look at Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Muhammad slept with he married a 6-year-old, he fiddled around with her, and then of course he had sex with her apparently at the age of 9 because she fell ill. So he waited until she was 9 before he consummated, and therefore this is legal for all Muslim men for all time under Sharia. I'll pause there. I mean, that's enough for now. Any comments or thoughts before I move on?
There is another question by someone else if you want.
Sure.
1 second. Dan, go ahead, please. Dan? No. Please continue. Maybe we'll come later.
No. I'm right here.
Oh,
Sorry. My bad. It's been months since I spoke on this forum, and I just feel like we're losing track of things. We're looking at religion. We should stop talking about religion, about these old scriptures, and
My friend, do you have a question? Because we are in the middle of a lecture.
Islam is not a religion, it's a political and legal system. It's called a deen. I can give you the definition, but religion is maybe 3, 4, 5% of Islam. It's mostly a political and legal system. So we're discussing the legal and political system of Islam.
Yeah, but can I just ask a dumb question? This is going to be a really dumb question. Why are we still talking about a relic?
Because I mean, it's still kind of relevant today. It's still around,
Yes, but we're moving away from it. We're moving into a whole new era of spirituality, of blessings. About
did you tell Al Qaeda that? Did you tell ISIS that? Did you let the Taliban know?
How do you mean?
Did you send them? Did they get the memo? Did you inform them?
I'm lost.
I know. I can tell.
No, I'm lost because
Islam
Yes,
is an immediate and overwhelmingly danger to the whole world. This is something that we already established. This is not something which you can consider a relic from the past, but we are all suffering from that, and especially in Europe and this massive immigration and these political ideas, which is eventually infiltrating all our systems of life. So if you don't see the connection for why it's relevant for today, then
I do see the connection. But if you're not your brother's keeper, and if you're not willing to step into the love frequency, we're all lost.
No, we are not doing love frequency.
Step into that frequency. Sorry, they're definitely not willing to step into that frequency. And but also, I don't know where it says "roll over and play dead." I'm not sure which verse that is in the Bible, but I'm pretty sure that we need to stand up against evil. So, right.
Well,
thank you, Dan.
Like I said, thanks for listening out for a few seconds. You know what? You guys are traveling down a journey that's it's just part of the cabal situation. So I wish you all the best, guys. You're journeying into darkness and not into the light.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Take us into darkness, please.
Warp speed, Mr. Sulu. Yeah. Okay. So we were discussing we were discussing the levels within Islam. So mysticism, direct communion with ultimate reality. Okay, knowledge of God attained through subjective, not objective, but subjective experience. Right. So let's have a look at Kushairi. Right. We spoke of this last week. Mysticism and the esoteric, designed for, understood by the specially initiated alone. So Islam has the initiates. Right. Now you've got this book by Kushairi, which is a commentary on the Quran, and he determined there are 4 levels of meaning in the Quran. Right. The Ibara, which is the meaning of the text meant for the mass of believers. Then you've got the Ishara, only available to the spiritual elite, which is lying beyond the obvious verbal meaning. Then you've got the Lataif, the subtleties in the text meant for the Sufi saints. Now, when Islam refers to saints, they refer to Sufis. Now, if the Sufis are, I don't know, what was she saying, corrupt Muslims? Well, it's interesting that every single saint in Islam is a Sufi. Fascinating stuff, right? Someone needs to get on that. Somebody needs to get on that right now and say, oh my, Islam's been doing it wrong for at least 1,000 years. And then you've got the Haqaiq. Now understand the Latifa is feminine, right? Not masculine. Finally, the Haqaiq, which is said is only comprehensible to the prophets and of course the highest levels of scholars. So now this is the standard of Sufi thought. Now I understand she will say that, oh, the Sufis are not Muslims, whatever. ISIS is not Muslim. Look, at the end of the day, the logical conclusion of that is that Islam has nothing to do with Islam, right? So let's move on. Now, Ghazali, who's the prime scholar of Islam after Muhammad himself, he said that Sufism, tasawwuf, is personally obligatory for every Muslim. Now, how he meant this, I mean, that one can read and look in his own writings about that. But knowledge is obligatory for every Muslim. So Gnosticism, tasawwuf, is effectively Gnosticism. Now, let's have a look at what Islam says about Christ. Okay, what are Islam's views on Jesus? Let's have a look at their basic views. So this verse, Quran 4:157 to 4:158, sums up Islam's attitude towards Christianity, right? Because within Christian belief, the death of Christ and the resurrection is of primary importance for the remission of sin, right? And they said in boast, we killed Christ Jesus, the son of Mary, the messenger of Allah, but they killed him not, nor crucified him, but so it was made to appear to them. But another was made to resemble him to them. So Islam claims that Jesus did not die, someone else died. Of course, within the hadith, you read that no person can bear the punishment for sin of another. But here someone else was made to bear the sin of Jesus, right? And those who differ therein are full of doubts, with no certain knowledge. Again, we come to the secret knowledge that Islam has, but only conjecture to follow. For of a surety they killed him not. Allah raised him up unto himself. Now, what's very interesting is that within the Quran, you'll read a verse that says, blessed is the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I am raised again. Which is very interesting that Islam says that, because, and this applies to Jesus. However, within the Islamic eschatological narrative, which is the end times narrative, Jesus never dies, goes straight to heaven, comes back, he kills the Jews, kills the Christians, destroys the church, kills the pigs, okay? Make sure there's no non-Muslims in the world anymore. Then Jesus marries and dies, which completely contradicts the Quran. Fascinating stuff. But anyway, so now I've got a totally different presentation, okay, on this subject, but this is important to understanding what Islam says about Christianity. However, this idea that another was made to resemble him is stolen directly out of the Gnostic Gospels. It's entirely a Gnostic belief that was going around since the 2nd century. So now, Qurtubi says here, according to the exegetes, now apparently Muslims claim that Christians and Jews are excessive in their religion. This refers to the extremism of the Jews concerning Jesus in accusing Mary of fornication. Fine, so apparently the Jews accuse Mary of fornication, and the extremism of the Christians in considering Jesus a god. For both excessiveness and remissness are evil, and both may be unbelief. In fact, they are unbelief according to Islam. Now, they state here, I am the truth, right? They believe that Jesus is the truth. The mistake of the Christians who saw the truth in the person of Jesus and said that Jesus was the divinity. So they state bluntly, and again, this is a Gnostic belief, that Jesus was not the divinity. He was not, okay? Now, where did they get some of these ideas? So we need to start with, let's start with the Manichaeans. The Manichaeans are an old Gnostic sect. They're still around today. Oddly enough, they're known as the Mandeans. So This is also a Docetist belief. Okay, so the Docetic interpretation regarding Jesus' crucifixion was originally spread by the Manichaeans, or one of the sources was the Manichaeans, which was prevalent in Arabia during the 6th century. So this is where Islam gets this. And of course, they got it from earlier sources dating back to the 2nd century and so on. So like the prohibition of wine that they got from the Manichaeans and the fasting rules, Islamic views on Jesus' death may well have been influenced by Manichaeanism. Manichaeism quotes the Gospel of Thomas. Well, what is fascinating is that Islam quotes Manichaeism, and Manichaeism quotes the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas 73 times. So clearly there is a very strong Gnostic source again. So now here we've got this, this is an older reference that they speak of this doctrine came to the Muslims through the medium of Manichaeism, which adopted this belief and gave it a definite shape. The Jesus of the Manichaeans had no objective reality as a man, because in many cases, according to the Gnostics, Jesus was not a human. He was a spirit. He was an illusion. He appeared real, but he was just transparent. Basically, I mean, he was not a physical body. He was a mere apparition, and so were his sufferings. It was not he who was really crucified, but it was an emissary of the devil who tried to frustrate the instructive activity of Jesus, and who, as a punishment for his wickedness, was fastened to the cross. Now, when you go to the Islamic scholars and you read their different, in their what's called their tafsir, their interpretations or exegesis of the Quran, of the story of the crucifixion, they all have contradictory, vastly differing stories of what happened during the crucifixion. And many of these are just corruptions of older Gnostic texts, right? So now here's a book that told, this is a very old book, 1758, The Credibility of Gospel History. It's got a very long title, from a man called Photius from 820 to 891. In his Bibliotheca, he mentions the fact that in an apocryphal book called The Travels of the Apostles, it was asserted that Christ had not been crucified, but another in his stead. So again, Islam is borrowing writings that go back, oh, sorry, no, but okay, this is a writing about that, but sorry, there's a long history of this that goes back through from the 2nd century all the way up through these Gnostic texts. Islam borrowed this. And it states here, the Manichaeans. They speak of the work of Lucius, made use of the Manichaeans. All the preceding quotations of apocryphal books in Augustine are taken out of one and the same book called the Acts or Travels of the Apostles, composed by Lucius. The apocryphal Acts of Andrew, Thomas, Peter, John, and even Paul were not distinct books, but part of one and the same work called Acts of the Apostles. And it says the Manichaeans make use of the Acts of the 12 Apostles, especially those of Andrew. Okay, so short version, this discusses there were older Gnostic texts that the Manichaeans used that made these claims. The Muslims simply borrowed. Now let's talk about the Manichaeans and the Jahiliyyah. Right, I've got extensive, I will come into more details, and I can show other presentations where you can show all of the older Gnostic claims and how Islam has borrowed from these and just kind of synthesized these, I think they would call it syncretism. They just kind of glommed it all together into one set of beliefs. Manichaeans believed that the world had been taken over by the evil demiurge, the king of darkness. The result of his victory for man is that reason was taken away from them, and they became like unto a man bitten by a wild dog or a serpent. Now, don't forget, Islam believes that before the coming of Islam, there was the Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance, the time of darkness, the time of barbarity before the coming of Islam, right? And Islam came to bring knowledge, which was going to lead man out. They brought the secret knowledge, the sacred knowledge, to lead us out of the time of ignorance. Just as the secret mystery cults, right, of the Gnostics believe that they have the secret knowledge that brings salvation, Islam believes it has the secret knowledge that brings salvation, right? The knowledge which takes you out of ignorance, because within the Gnostic sects, knowledge leads you out of ignorance to salvation. Islam leads you out of ignorance to salvation. For genesis of jihad, okay, Basilides. Now let's not get into Basilides now, but the jahil means ignorance, or you are not yet initiated into the truths of the faith. That's an interesting initiation into a secret society or a cult. They speak of also barbaric, anti-Islamic, and wicked. That's the Jahiliyyah. And it implies apostasy from Islam, which is punishable by death. And the Jahiliyyah is the term for the time of ignorance before the mission of Muhammad. Now, interestingly, this idea of like unto a man bitten by a wild dog or a serpent from the writings of the Manichaeans, right? When the king of darkness won the world, right? When he won the victory over the good God and then the evil God created the earth, Islam believes that non-Muslims are the worst of beasts, right? They teach that we're the worst of beasts, the lowest of animals. So there might be a correlation, and there's a possibility of that. So now let's have a look. I'll finish up shortly. I'll finish in a few minutes. So you've got the prophet and the messenger of Allah, so Isa, according to Islam, who is Isa? Who is Jesus? Isa is the prophet and messenger of Allah to Bani Israel, to the Jews, to Israel, right? To the people of Israel who denied him and plotted against him. He was known as the word of Allah because Allah created him without father by the mere word be, whereupon his mother conceived him. Now, of course, in Islam, they also don't state how old Mary was, right? But it's okay, whatever. She wasn't that old. And it's, don't forget, they have a problem with this happening in the Bible, but it's okay when it happens in the Quran. That's a hypocrisy. Now, they say here, among the inimitable prophetic miracles given to Jesus was he raised the dead, he made the blind see, he healed lepers, he molded a bird from clay and breathed into it, and it became a living bird. Which none of this is in the Bible. When Bani Israel wanted to kill him, Allah saved him, as described in the words of the Holy Quran. This is from the Reliance of the Traveler. This reference I'm using here is, again, I said, the most popular Islamic law reference manual in the world. They did not slay him or crucify him, but thus it was made to seem to them entirely Gnostic ideas. They say here, Yahuda, chief of the Jews, met with a band of people to kill Isa, but Allah sent Gabriel to Isa. Now, who is Isa? Esau. Jesus' name is Yeshua. This is a different character entirely. So Allah sent Gabriel to Isa to lead him to a covered alleyway that had a skylight through which he was taken up to the sky. When Yahuda, in pursuit, ordered one of his companions to follow Isa into the passageway and murder him, Allah cast the likeness of Isa upon the man as he entered. And when he came out again after a fruitless search, the Jews attacked and killed him, thinking him to be Isa, and hung him upon a cross. Now, of course, we know from the history that Jesus was alive when he was placed on the cross. So here they go against the historical narrative, but this is within the Shafi'i school of jurisprudence. This is the official narrative doctrine. But you can go through numerous different doctrines, which all contradict each other, tell a different story. In some of the stories, 4,000 men surrounded the house that Jesus was in. So Jesus could not escape, and he was still somehow disappeared through the roof. So yeah, I'll pause here for a moment. It's been all sorts of fun and games tonight. But any questions or comments from you? Oh, and I should mention, before I go on, hold on. This clay bird, okay, where Jesus molded a clay bird and breathed into it, this is a direct reference to the infancy gospel of Thomas, which is a known mythical Gnostic tale with no biblical support. It is also found in a book called the Arabic Infancy Gospel of the Savior. So Islam specifically and explicitly draws upon Gnostic gospels, repeats them as if they were gospel, right? So Islam has numerous references to Gnosticism, and thus you can see that Islam draws upon, and we'll go into that in depth next time. Yes, Harry?
No, I just find it very interesting that Islam is also manipulating and corrupting the importance of the sacrifice of Christ for the sake of the sins of the world and all that. So they just omitted the whole thing and brought us a new narrative. It's incredible.
Yeah, for instance, like she mentioned the Quran, right? This woman was mentioning the Quran. Now, what's interesting is that when you read through the hadiths, when you read through the Sirah, the Gospels of Muhammad, what they call the biographies, right? Muhammad does all sorts of miracles. Muhammad, let's see, he did things that raised the dead. He made the blind see. He healed the sick. Muhammad made water flow. Muhammad made all sorts of miracles. Apparently, he was the most prolific miracle worker in all of history, of all the prophets, including Jesus. And yet, there's not a single mention of his miracles in the Quran. So now she believes in hadith that claim that Muhammad did miracles, but the Quran explicitly states that Muhammad did not bring miracles or perform miracles. But yet, Muhammad apparently did, according to the scholars that she believes, because the way that she prays, remember when she was talking about, I said, show me how to pray. Because we can go into the Sharia, I can show you specifically how Muslims pray, because the specific methodology is taught within the Sharia manual. They teach you, this is what you need to do when you go to madrasa and you're 5 years old and you start learning how to do all this stuff. It's taught there. It's not in the Quran. The Quran says, yes, you should pray. And she read all that waffle to us that said, yeah, you got to pray. Okay, how exactly? How specifically? Like, show me step by step how we do this. If this was a dance routine, how would we do it? It's not in the Quran. Yes. Your
Yeah, it's
thoughts?
very interesting. That lady now is bombarding the channel with quotes from the Bible, the Old Testament, especially Deuteronomy. Help me with the name of the book.
Deuteroscopy
Deuteronomy.
from Deuteroscopy.
So she's basically making the claim, instead of dealing with your arguments against Islam, she's attacking now the Old Testament. What would you say to that, actually? What would you say about the violence in the Old Testament?
So the Bible is historical, okay, whereas the Quran, the Bible is a historical narrative. It discusses the development of man from, I don't know what, 5,500 years ago up to today, or up to whenever it was up to this first or second century or whatever. So what you have is, you've got a description of the state of man, the description of the tribes of Israel, the description of the people surrounded them, and the history of it. So it is history, whereas the Quran is prescriptive, the Bible is descriptive. I'll say that again. The Bible is descriptive, the Quran is prescriptive. Muhammad is the perfect man. He could do no wrong, and everything Muhammad did is sunnah. It is the example for all Muslims to follow for all time. Whereas, for instance, when God said, look, kill the Canaanites or whatever, okay? If I recall, it was that group. For 400 years, God had sent prophets to Canaan or whatever it was, and he'd said, look, you guys are committing child sacrifice. You are committing incest. You are violating my law. This is evil. It is corrupt. You must stop. And for 400 years, they ignored or killed the prophets. And eventually God said to the Jews, to the Israelites, these people are an abomination. I've given them 400 years to change their ways. Go and kill them. This was not an instruction to kill everybody, kill all in sight. Okay? This was not an instruction to go and kill everyone, everywhere, for all time. This was a specific instruction given for a specific instance. Whereas the Quran, all of its activities, the last verse of the Quran that was written, the second last technically, but the last complete verse is chapter 9. The instructions there state explicitly, go and make jihad against the whole world until the whole world is Islamic. So Hammond, let's go have a look here. Let's go have a look at, I'm just going to find a reference here. I can't spell when I need to. Okay, so this is very interesting here. I'm just bringing this up. This is one of the interpretations of Quran 969. It says here from Tabari, we are the helpers of Allah, and we are the viziers of His messenger. We fight people until they believe in Allah, and one who disbelieves, we will fight him forever in the cause of Allah, and killing him is a small matter to us. Okay, so now I'm going to find another reference. This one is from Muhammad's biography. When Allah gave permission to his apostle to fight, the second oath of allegiance at Aqaba contained conditions involving war, which were not in the first act of fealty. Now they, Muhammad's followers, bound themselves to war against all and sundry for Allah. All and sundry, everybody, no matter who you are, against all and sundry for Allah and his apostle, and he promised them for faithful service the reward of paradise. So Jesus did not have armies. Muhammad had armies. Jesus did not kill anybody. Muhammad killed people. Muhammad's followers killed people. Jesus did not have 22 wives over his career. Muhammad did. Jesus did not have sex with a child. Muhammad did. Jesus did not sleep with his son's wife after making his son divorce the wife. Muhammad did. Okay, these are all things. So, and these are things that Muslims are allowed to do because they're Sunnah. Muhammad is perfect. So, Islam is a religion of law. It dictates law. The Sharia is the Talmud of Islam. People complain about Judaism having the Talmud. So you've got the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and then all that became the Talmud, the exegesis of all of that, and the development of Judaic law into the Talmud. Well, the Quran was exegeted into the Sharia, which is a ripoff of the Talmud, and a very backwards, inverted ripoff of the Talmud at that. So just like people have a huge issue with the Talmud, everyone should have an issue with the Talmud of Islam, which is the Sharia, right? And the fiqh. So understand, you've got now exactly the same situation. Okay? The Pharisees created the Talmud, which then created you've got the Moses, you've got the Torah, the Pharisees, and the Talmud, same thing. Scholars, took the Quran, there you go, Sharia, same nonsense. Okay? So the Bible is descriptive, not prescriptive. Christians are not told anyway to make war for all time on all and sundry. But this is, if you look at what is the legal definition of jihad, which you wouldn't give me, I did try and ask her. The legal definition of jihad in Islam is to make war on all mankind until they all become Muslims. Okay? It is permanent war on all mankind to make Islam primary in the world, and that's it. So does that answer your question? Does that go some way to answering that question, Harry?
It does. It always does. Thank you. 1 second, I have a question. Can we take a question by?
Sure, go ahead.
Can I just shoot a real quick one? Why whenever an Islamic person mentions the name Muhammad, why do they always say peace be upon him after? They never just say his name.
Yeah, they'll say that something blah blah blah, whatever. Because Muhammad is perfect. Muslims are required to love Muhammad with all their heart and all their mind and all their strength. So don't forget, Muhammad effectively replaces Jesus. Muhammad is the Islamic Jesus. He's the counterfeit Jesus, right? So Jesus is the Messiah. Muhammad is the King Messiah. Okay. Now Muhammad is also the replacement Moses. Muhammad is the Moses didn't finish the job. Muhammad finishes the job, but don't forget, Jews do not worship Moses. Effectively, Muhammad is worshipped within Islam because, according to the Sharia law, Muhammad must be loved by Muslims more than they love everything in their life, including their life. So they must love him more than their life. They must be willing to sacrifice it in jihad. But also they must love him more than their wife, their children, their parents, their career, their income, their friends, their family. So it's compulsory that they say this, that they do this. It shows that you're with the in club. It shows that you're woke. I mean, it's just one of those.
I couldn't be a Muslim. I love food too much.
Say again, sorry?
I couldn't be a Muslim. I love food too much. Far more than,
Can I ask a question, please?
Food is up there.
You want to know Saudi Arabia? Yes, you can. Saudi Arabia, for instance, has a massive problem with bacon smuggling. So it looks like they like bacon too.
Can I please ask a question? It's to Lloyd.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm from Western Australia, but I'm listening and it's very, very interesting. Have you had an opportunity to debate with the scholars you mentioned? Because obviously what you're bringing up is going to be very difficult to explain or convince them that are in such massive levels of indoctrination. So, I mean, what you're dealing with over in Europe is obviously completely different from what's going on in Australia. But I just was wondering whether you've had the opportunity to debate with them.
So anytime anyone, I have a YouTube channel under my name, Lloyd de Jong. I have a YouTube channel. I've got plenty of videos discussing this, and shorter and longer videos, and going through the Sharia, teaching people what the Sharia says. Because look, the Sharia has major explanatory power. It explains Islam very logically, very consistently. So I have reached out to various people. When I go onto Facebook forums, for instance, where they have these guys who are at seminary. Now, I can mop the floor with them. I've been on with them, and I'm like, okay, well, look, you've just said the following, but according to your scholars, according to these references, these are the fatwa, these are the rulings, this is the ijma, the consensus, right? The final decision as to what this means. And give me 5 minutes and they'll block me, okay? Because I'm embarrassing to them. I'm revealing things they don't want revealed. Understand? Because this is slander. Telling the truth that is embarrassing to Islam is slander. Slander in Western law is to tell a lie. Slander in Islam is to tell an embarrassing truth. Okay. 2, it falls under another category called namima, okay, which is tale-bearing, which is to say something about someone, like when I speak about Muhammad, that is not flattering to them. This is illegal. Okay. Also, it is, remember the law that I read earlier that stated that lay Muslims are not to know the details of scholastic theology. So they are allowed to know something about the Sharia, of course, how to follow the regulations, but the specific details is supposed to be denied to them by the Imams because this will cause doubt, because the stuff is just totally just Doesn't make sense. But look, when I have gone online, I've been blocked very, very quickly. I get banned from the channels on YouTube and on Facebook. And anyone who comments on my videos, I always invite them on. I'll invite them on and say, look, you're a big mouth. You seem to know a lot. Come on my channel. We're going to read the Sharia together. I'm still waiting for a taker. It's been a few years now. I'm still waiting. So people are not keen. Now, also, they want to debate. Understand the way that you... Let me show you let me show you. The way that they view debate is totally different to the way you view debate. I need to show you this. Okay, I need to make this very, very clear to you. So...
Yeah, thanks. That's interesting. Cheers.
Sure. Okay. So look, if you notice something good, it is sunnah to mention it. But if you notice something bad about someone, about a person, it is unlawful to mention it because this is slander. Not if you tell a lie, but if you see something that is true, but you speak about it, that is slander in Islam. Okay? That is a completely opposite view. Now, let me go to the official definition of slander, which is ghibba. Actually, let me just find it. So, slander, let me go to the official definition, because the way that they debate is not how you... Slander means to mention anything concerning a person that you would dislike. If it doesn't benefit a Muslim, you should remain silent. If it doesn't benefit Islam, you ought to remain silent. So slander in Islam, so I will be told that I'm slandering Islam because I'm telling the truth. Right now, I'm making slander. Understand? So the way that they debate is a format of using rhetoric to deceive. It's a very sophisticated form of sophistry, which was developed within the 9th century. So they have a very specific... The reason they want to debate is that they have a specific format, like this woman was doing, which fails to actually get to the question and deflects and moves off the topic and never addresses the topic. Because it's illegal for them to reveal the Sharia. It's also totally illegal for them to reveal the Sharia. They would be revealing secrets and weaknesses, and they cannot do that. So they have to move off the topic. Also, the fact that you said, Harry, that she is attacking the Old Testament, this is based on a tradition started in the 11th. He died in 1125, so the 12th century. It was developed in the 12th century by a scholar called Ibn al-Jabbar, Abd al-Jabbar. He basically created the tradition of we don't defend Islam, we attack the Bible. Okay, so what you do is you don't defend Islam, you attack the Bible, you deflect, so you make the other person defend the Bible. And I refuse to fall into that trap. I want them to discuss Islam from its top scholars. And if these are their best scholars, then why are these scholars lying? Why are these books written? Harry, does that answer your question? And does Matrushka, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does answer my question. Like going right back to the history of when the Islamic Quran and etc. was, I'll call it, invented. I mean that's a theory, but do you have any references to that? Because I mean that might be in another episode of the historical. This is my first episode, and thanks for listening. It would be good to know how deep and how far back do we think when this sort of was invented? Because you've just said that there was references to to some of the works of
Gnostic.
the Bible. So Gnostics. So that is extremely interesting to a lot of us to know the actual origins of it.
I'll be digging into that in the next episode. So the last few shows I've been discussing the sources of Islam, revealing what the Sharia is, the laws, and the Gnostic influences. I've been going through that. So next week I'll go into more depth in the next show. And so yes, I will be going through that. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is search for my name, Lloyd de Jong. You'll find there that I have copious discussions on that as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. But we generally in Australia, we're trying to stay off YouTube and Facebook at the moment because obviously the totalitarians are reigning quite high, mate.
I understand. I have a very good buddy in Australia, and the stories he tells me, man, he's good grief, dude. I have good buddies all around the world. I've been fortunate to travel, not to Australia yet, but I have a good friend in Australia, and man, I'm sorry what's happening there. It's really all the best, man. It's just
surreal and it's absurd. That's what it is. That's the only words I can use for it.
Yeah, man. Don't worry. Look, just hopefully things will. Let's hope things prevail. But I wish you guys strength. Let's hope for the best.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Lloyd, can we take a question from Dave?
Sure.
It wasn't a question. It was just a comment, because as much as I've read, this dedication, peace be upon him, obviously illustrates that he's still not in peace, not at rest.
Police be upon him would be more appropriate.
Well, better than that would be peace be upon you.
Because Muhammad, okay, let me actually go to the reference. Let me actually find it. It's in section P75.2, and I can never remember the page number it's on. But you must, okay, first of all, the prohibition on revealing the Sharia to people, like one of the many prohibitions of secrecy, spying on the Muslims and revealing their weaknesses. What I'm doing right now is I am spying on the Muslims because I'm revealing their weakness. So I've spied upon them. I've spied on their works, right? And I'm revealing their weakness. But notice here, it says not loving the Prophet more than all people. Section P75.2. So in Christianity, it says you must love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your strength. Harry, do you have a similar requirement or commandment for Jehovah in Judaism?
To be honest, I don't even know what they want from me, but no.
So okay, well, let's just look. The thing is, I would assume that you're to love God with all your heart. However, the Sharia requires from Muslims that they love Muhammad more than all people, including themselves. Okay, so that's section P75, and now I'm going to find section P. Okay, so let me go to section P75.2. I'm going to find it and actually read it to you so you can see it. P. Man, I can never remember the freaking page of this one. Somehow this one always escapes me. P75.23, fantastic. Now we're getting somewhere. P75.2, here we go. So, yeah, so they're required to say this, Allah bless him and give him peace, okay? More than all people. So notice, this is basically elevating Muhammad to the status of a deity. When you read the Sirah of Muhammad, the biographies of Muhammad, they call them, but they're really the Gospels of Muhammad. They're the copies, the rip-offs of Jesus' Gospels. Sue me if you don't like that. But it states here, so they make Muhammad very clearly, very distinctly within the Sirah into a deity, right? The equivalent of Jesus. In fact, superior to Jesus. For instance, Jesus is born as a man, and on the 8th day, according to Jewish custom, Jesus is circumcised. In the Sirah, Muhammad goes one better. Muhammad is born circumcised. Yes, Muhammad's special. But now, none of you believes until I am more beloved to him than his wife, child, self, and all people. This will be taken from a hadith. And Muhammad said, the Prophet said, none of you believes, none of you is a proper Muslim, none of you believes in Islam until I am more beloved to him than his wife, child, his life, and all people. And love of the Prophet means the will to obey him and not disobey him. This is one of the obligations of Islam. So Muhammad must be more important to you than everything in the world, which is crazy because Moses is not someone that Jews love as if Moses was God. Does that answer your question?
Who asked the question? I'm lost here with everything that is happening in the channel. A lot of fun. You spoke to Dave, right?
Yeah, I think so. So okay, someone spoke about Aisha about the jizya stains. Yeah, jizya stains. Yeah. So, good grief. So maybe I need to go into that. Maybe someone actually wants to know about that.
I want to know if they had wet ones during that time.
Again?
Hold on. We're gonna go into.
Never mind.
Okay, I didn't get that. Sorry about that. Okay. So hold on.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Your debates, Lloyd, and you're explaining in these episodes. I mean, I presume it's to just inform the public of the and of the roots of Islam, and to sort of prepare them and just say, hang on, this isn't really what we want in our society. I mean, that's I'll probably see. I'm presuming that's what you want to get at right at this point in time in history. Is that like the main threat in mainland Europe? Is that what was that why we're talking about this? Is that why it's on this channel?
Islam is a threat. Sharia is its threat doctrine. Sharia explains Islam. It makes it plain. It exposes it without the confusion. Because Muslims can go in this they can run in circles around the Quran because there are contradictory verses in the Quran. Like this woman said earlier, one scholar says fight, the other scholar says peace. Because the Quran says both. It is dualistic. It is contradictory. So how do you find the consensus which explains this contradiction? Well, the doctrine is called abrogation, which works out which is superior. And then you've got the ijma, which is the consensus that says this is the final opinion. And that is the final doctrine. Now, Islam is explained through the Sharia. It disambiguates, it removes all the confusion and tells you what remains that is still relevant within Islam. So Islam, if you look at the legal definition of jihad, not the colloquial or dictionary, but the legal definition of jihad is warfare for all time to impose Islam. Now, warfare, there's at least 14 different kinds of jihad. 14. Which one are they doing? Are they doing jihad with a knife, jihad with a gun, or are they doing jihad of the mouth, jihad of the pen, jihad of the wallet? Are they doing, you pick one. Which one are they doing? They're all doing jihad, just which one, right? So they're allowed to win through whatever means that they can. Now, so people do need to understand, Islam also goes against the laws, it goes against the morals, the norms of Western society. It is completely antithetical to Western beliefs, Western society, Western norms. I personally would be very unhappy if everyone voted for Islam to become the religion of Europe, and as what will happen once Sharia becomes fully entrenched and fully implemented is that you will see there is no lower limit. Read the fatwa. I can bring up plenty of references, but we can bring up the fatwa that shows, for instance, I mean, who wants their 3-year-old given to some 40-year-old man so that he can have sex with her? Because that's legal in Islam. It's perfectly legal, okay, under the Sharia. So yeah, I want to make sure that people understand what they're getting into, what they're allowing into their countries, and that this needs to be rejected. Hopefully that answers your question. Someone mentioned semen.
Yes.
Sorry,
Jeez,
yeah.
yeah.
Someone mentioned semen. So Muhammad's 6-year-old wife scraped semen off his clothes with her fingernails constantly, regularly, routinely. Let's go through a selection of these hadith that this woman mentioned earlier, the hadith she loved so much.
Lloyd, can you send the quote you're reading from into the main channel in the We Are the 99, please?
I can probably copy and paste this. So give me a sec.
Thank you.
So let me just scroll down here. Okay, I'm just going to paste this into the chat quickly, and then I'll read it for you.
Thanks.
Hopefully this has been entertaining. So I'm just going to paste it into the We're the 99%. Right? Bob's your uncle. There it went. So let's read this here. So Muhammad's wife. Let me go back to so I can read it off the screen here. Narrated Aisha, Muhammad's wife, his 6-year-old wife. I used to wash the traces of semen from the clothes of the Prophet, and used to go for prayers while traces of water were still on it. Water spots were still visible. Right? As above, this is Sahih Muslim. So Sahih Bukhari. Sorry, Bukhari is the most trusted, the most authentic, most authoritative of all of the hadith narrations. Narrated blah blah. I asked Aisha about the clothes soiled with semen. She replied, I used to wash it off the clothes of Allah's messenger, and he would go for prayer. I heard Sulaiman blah blah, the clothes soiled with semen. He said that Aisha had said, Muhammad's wife, I used to wash it off the clothes of Allah's messenger. I used to wash the semen off the clothes of the Prophet, and even then I used to notice one or more spots on them. So she didn't wash all the spots off. Muhammad would go and pray with jizz all over his clothes. I used to scrape off the semen, dry semen, from the garment of the Messenger of Allah, the perfect man. Don't forget. Now, Harry, without being blasphemous, but is there any discussion in the Torah of Moses having his 6-year-old wife scrape semen off of his robes?
I don't know, but I guess the Jews had washing machines that time, so that wasn't a problem.
But there's no mention of it, right, within the Holy Scriptures. There's no mention of it in the Holy Scriptures, right?
I don't think so.
So, yep, to my knowledge, not.
And the pages would stick, you know?
That is also true.
I think Hans has a question.
Sure.
Yeah, where is that? Where is he? 1
Go
second.
ahead.
Hans, go ahead. Hans, I unmuted you.
So, anyway, until Hans gets here. So, notice there are numerous references to semen on Muhammad's clothing. I often scrape semen from the garment of the messenger with my hand. There's even one mention where she gets it under her fingernails. So this is the perfect man, ladies and gentlemen, who had cum all over his clothes.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yes, Hans.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hans.
Yeah, can you please read out of the actual Quran and not these made-up things that you're taking out of context?
Can you please stop lying to me and realize that the hadith are actually sources of Islamic law, and in fact, these are required for you to believe as a good Muslim?
Say that again.
I'm sure you heard me quite well.
No, the phone was on speaker. I missed your point. Say that again, sorry.
No, how about I don't?
So can you please read out the Quran and not take this out of context?
So tell me, is Sahih Bukhari a fake Islamic scholar? Is Sahih Bukhari the most trusted of the hadith narrations, or is he a fake scholar?
It's not, no. We read the Quran and we get from the Quran only. That's a Muslim.
So you want the Quran only? Are you a Qur'anist?
Sorry?
You realize a Qur'anist makes you an apostate. Being a Qur'anist and rejecting the Sunnah makes you an apostate.
No, it doesn't. How do you know that? You're very big.
So you don't believe in the Sunnah of Muhammad. You don't believe the Sunnah of Muhammad.
I believe in the Sunnah of Muhammad, yeah.
This is the Sunnah of Muhammad. So why are you rejecting it?
Who told you that? Who told you that?
Sahih Bukhari is not.
Can you please read out the actual Quran? Read out the actual Quran, the book, the actual book that he brought out and he got the message for. Not out of these made up things that people have wrote and you're taking out of context. Can you actually read the actual proof out of the Quran? Because you never.
What is out of context of I used to scrape? What is out of context? What Muhammad's wife says, I scraped semen from the garment of Allah with my hand.
Was you there with her? Was you there with her?
So you saying that the Sunnah of Muhammad is false?
Was you there with her? Yes.
So the Sunnah of Muhammad is false. That is fascinating. So you saying that millions of Muslims believe these extensive writings about Muhammad that are totally false?
No one believes that. You're putting words in my mouth. I don't believe.
No one believes this. I wonder. I mean, good grief. Are you saying that Muslims don't believe the Sunnah?
Read out the Quran.
But he's giving you the Sunnah. He's giving you the Sunnah. No. Sorry, Hans. He's giving you the Sunnah with specific quotes.
What's the Sunnah? What is the Sunnah? What do you know of the Sunnah? Read the Quran, not the Sunnah that people have wrote. You know that the Bible was written by many people. It was all faked. That Sunnah is the same thing. It's been written by many people.
The whole science.
So can you read out the actual Quran?
So you're mujtahids.
Hans is trying to answer you. 1 second.
So your muhadith are all liars. They're all dishonest.
Oh, what? Sorry.
So your muhadith, your Islamic muhadith, are all liars and dishonest scholars.
Again. I'm a Muslim and I follow Muhammad, peace be upon him, and I read the Quran. That's it. Just let's leave it at that.
You see, now, because you're a lay Muslim, you're at the Ibara level of Islam. You're at the lowest level, right? Because you're a lay Muslim, you're at the Ibara level of understanding. You're only allowed to read the Quran and some of the Hadith. Understand? So, which means that the higher levels of understanding are off limits to you. The scholarly levels of understanding are actually off limits to you. Now, suddenly you are throwing, which Muslims typically do, they have to, they will throw all of their scholars under the bus, including the Sahih. Now, you're saying there's no Sahih at all? The Sahih is entirely false?
You've got your own hateful agenda that you're taking out of context. Read out the actual Quran.
I'm reading what your major scholars write.
Even if that was correct, what's that got to do with anything? Just because you clean jizzed off? What's that got to do with anything?
the
Read out the
perfect
actual
man
Quran.
had
Go on.
cum all over his clothes, and his 6-year-old wife had to scrape it off with a
Who
fingernail.
said she's 6 years old, first of all?
Your Sahih Bukhari.
What is Sahih Bukhari? Who's wrote it?
Now notice, Harry, remember
I
I
don't
mentioned
think he
that.
knows who's Sahih Bukhari.
Who is Sahih Bukhari? Go on. Who wrote Sahih Bukhari?
Remember, Harry, I mentioned
Which one
that
are
they
you
have this
following? Where have you got
method
your
of
book from? Where
sophistry.
have you got
Notice he's
information from?
asking
Where have you got...
questions. Notice he's asking questions designed to deflect and to undermine the evidence presented. He doesn't offer evidence. He offers questions that create doubt. I mentioned they have a specific method of debate. You're seeing this now in practice. This is what happens. Now suddenly he's throwing the major scholars, the muhaddith, under the bus. Right? Suddenly, whatever embarrasses Islam, because remember I said I'm guilty of slander and talebearing, right? Ghibba and namima, right? Ghibba also is known as backbiting. So now he has to try to defend Islam, and so now he's practicing commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. So he's got to go through this whole process. Remember I mentioned they have a rhetoric that is deceitful in the beginning, and this is precisely what they are doing.
Yeah, he's saying that you full of bullshit. You're taking stuff out of context. Read from the Quran. Don't mute me if you can't take the truth. I have a better. Never mind. These people. Can we take?
Tell me the hadith. Now the question is: now Muslims quote these hadith left and right, whole day, every day, and suddenly, when the hadith are embarrassing, suddenly it's like, oh, that's not true, which is interesting. Islam is the only religion where Muslims lie to defend it. Crazy.
Yeah. Do you want him to still
And
respond?
also,
Or?
they've got to claim that their own scriptures are false to defend the religion. Who would go around saying, but our scriptures are false? That is crazy stuff.
He's saying, who quoted those hadith? Why are you making things up? I don't care about this, Hans, but do you have like some kind of an answer that we can show the audience that will put an end to this lie? I mean, we saw his objection, and I recognize that as a deception. I don't know about the others here. But do you have like something to show us that can put an end?
Can I say something? I don't think he may be going from a deception. I mean, when he's asking whether he reads from Quran, maybe it's because that is what he's only reading. Maybe it's not because he's. I mean, I understand, Lloyd, you're saying that what you understand, and you know a lot more about it than most everybody probably on this chat, is that you need to have a different level of understanding within the hierarchy of Islam. However, if you've got millions of people around the world that are reading just the Quran, it's like having millions of people around the world probably reading the Bible. Okay, just the Bible.
The Quran doesn't stand alone. The Bible stands alone. The Bible does not have hundreds of additional...
I understand that. I mean, I personally, I'm a Christian, but however, around the world at the moment, we're going with this debate about, what's right and wrong. And in the end, I'm just probably from objective point of view, is that I'm thinking that he may be thinking, I'm reading just from the Quran, and he doesn't. Those other texts are irrelevant to him because he only reads the Quran. Maybe.
That's not true. He's lying. Bluntly, he's lying to me because he knows they believe the hadith. Because remember, even this other woman mentioned the hadith because she said, look, what is not in the Quran, because when I said, show me the procedure for prayer, she couldn't show it in the Quran. She gave us some waffle. They said, well, it's in the hadith. Now this guy's saying those same hadiths that they rely on are suddenly false and unnecessary. So, yeah.
Yeah,
so hold on.
Correct. So if he says, well, I don't read any of them, then that just ends that debate. If he references any of the other texts, then we definitely know it's a lie. But if he only says he only reads the Quran, then it's...
So let's have a look. Let's have a look here. Let's look within the Sharia. Let's look at the top scholars of Islam. These are not scholars that were born yesterday. We're talking, this book is at least 900 years old. It's about 900 years old. Okay, so it's well established. Right, it is very, very well established. The most famous Islamic law manual in the world, still around, still republished, still sold. It says here, types of hadith include hadiths which are mutawatir, related by whole groups of individuals from whole groups in multiple continuous channels of transmission leading back to the Prophet according to them, such that the sheer number of separate channels at each stage of transmission, too many for it to be possible for it all to have conspired to fabricate the hadith, which is thereby obligatory to believe in, and denial of which is unbelief, which is kufr, which makes him an apostate. I did not write this, but it states here. Now, Sahih Bukhari is the #1 hadith writer on earth in Islam, period. Sahih Bukhari means reliable, authentic. Sahih Bukhari is the most important of the Islamic scriptural texts after the Quran. All right? So there you go. If you want to find out more about Islam, you have to go to that hadith. There's no option. There's no choice. Sahih Bukhari is the #1 collection of hadith, and it states here that these hadiths are mutawatir. It is obligatory for him to believe in them, and denial of that is kufr. Now, tell me something. Did I present evidence for my points? Did I present evidence, or did I just pull shit out of my butt and just make up a story with no? He was waffling. Understand? He's lying because it is compulsory. It is obligatory for him to lie. He has no choice. He is forced by his deen to lie to me, to lie to you, to lie to himself, to lie to his mother, to lie to everybody. They all have to do it. There's no choice because the religion teaches deceit. And this is what it says here, right here in black and white. I didn't make this up.
Yeah.
Could I suggest that there is another option, and that is that there are so many people who've been indoctrinated into just the Quran. I've heard many of them, even though they don't realize that they're actually committing apostasy when they make that statement.
I don't believe that.
It's got to do with the amount of knowledge. It's got to do with the amount of knowledge they've got of their own.
They all become Quran only the moment you know things that are embarrassing about Islam. The moment you show things that are embarrassing, they all, to a man, become Quran only. I only believe in the Quran. Dude, it's so repetitive. They need to come up with a new script.
Yeah.
Could we let Hans see if he can answer that question specifically, because he's still here?
Can we do that, Lloyd?
Bring on, yeah.
Hans, go ahead, enlighten us.
Let's go with this then, because Lloyd is talking a lot of waffle and he's taking everything out of context here. So
the Quran has no context. The Sharia is the context of the Quran. The Sharia is the final context.
You tried censoring my truth because I'm calling you out, yeah? You're taking everything out of context. You're not reading the Quran. If you actually read the Quran that we follow, then you will understand what the religion is. You keep speaking about these hadiths.
No. We spoke about it, and the hadith and the sunnah and the Sharia is part of your religion. Don't hide it, please.
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So he brought evidence from the sunnah, right? From the hadith.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he did.
Which one? What evidence?
When we were talking about the hadith.
He's taken everything out of context. Why is he not reading the Quran? He keeps saying the Quran is the main thing. Why is he reading out?
He didn't say that the Quran is the main thing. He said the Sharia is the main thing, the ultimate.
It is not. No, it is all out of the Quran. You need to read the Quran because he's so scared of the Quran that the Quran speaks truth.
Yeah,
he cannot bring that up on the page. He keeps bringing up misplaced quotes from hadiths that he's made up himself, or he's got some from haters, and he keeps speaking about them instead. Why don't you speak from the actual Quran, the stuff that's come from God?
Okay.
You know the hadiths that you're talking about have been made after the Quran, after people have thought.
Oh, we know they were made up. We know for a fact they were made up. Dude, they're a bunch of made up garbage. But
the main information source, which is the Quran, it's that simple.
The most incomplete information source as well, because the Quran, unfortunately, if you don't have the hadith, you won't have a clue what's going on in Islam, because the hadith complete the Quran.
Who told you that?
Show me where the 5 daily prayers are mentioned in the Quran. Show me where the 5 daily prayers are listed in the Quran. Where they mentioned, where they named. Where they named and mentioned.
The Quran mentions you have to do 50 daily prayers, right? But that's been taken down to 5.
That's not what I'm talking about. We're not talking about the night journey. We want to know specifically where the 5 daily prayers listed for us. Where they listed.
Lloyd,
because it's not.
Prayers are mentioned in the night journey. You've contradicted yourself again.
Hans, he has a specific question about the 5. 1 second, Hans. He has a question about the 5 specific prayers of the day. Can you show us where in the Quran it's mentioned?
Where they're named, where they're listed and named. No, they're not named and mentioned. They're not named. Where are they named? They've got 5 names. So they've got names. Each one is a name. Where they're named and listed in the Quran. Good luck. What you can do is drop it in the chat. Let us know where they are, because you're going to find it for us, right? Good luck. Good luck with that.
Why you
Good
why
luck
you
with that, dude.
source of division now? Because I've just called your truth out. You're now trying to pick on
So the
something
way that
else.
Muslims pray in the mosque, the way that you pray in the mosque, those instructions for how to do the prayer, step by step, okay, the step-by-step instructions for performing the prayer correctly. Give us the exact location of where those instructions are found in the Quran. Good luck with that too, buddy. Not going to find it. How do you perform a marriage in Islam? It's not in the Quran, but good luck finding it in there.
They are
The
in the
Quran is
Quran.
still incomplete. You're not going to find any of that stuff in
Very
there.
complete.
So
It's all
that is
100%
why your
factual.
scholars made exegesis in the Sharia. And that is where you find all of this information laid out.
Who's told you about Islam? Please tell me that first. Who's taught you Islam?
So understand. So Harry, he's going to distract. He's going to move off the topic. He's going to change the goalposts.
No, who's taught you
Understand. He's
Islam?
not going to provide any evidence. Notice he's asking questions. Notice.
Lloyd, do you
Take
need
careful note.
donations? Have you got an
He's,
agenda? Have you got a hateful
he's
agenda? You
asking
asking for donations?
questions. Okay.
Yeah.
He's asking questions. He's constantly utilizing questions to deflect,
You're
to
doing.
distract.
You're making up lies.
He's not
You're making
providing evidence. Understand? If he had evidence, he would give us the quotes, this verse, this chapter, and so on. It's not in the Quran. He can't. He'll never get to it because it's not there. Good luck. If he shows it to me, good luck with that. But understand, the Sharia explains the Quran. The Sharia is the final interpretation, is the final, what's the word, context of the Quran. So now we've just shown you. Now, is it an accident that this passage here appears neatly within the Sharia? So Harry, from your perspective, I mean, considering that you're an evil Jew who hates the Christians, right? And you're never going to support me because you're a bad Jew. Does it look like what is your objective view of this passage that I have you in front of me?
About related, by 1 second, let me.
The types of Sunnah Hadith.
Yeah.
I mean, why was this written? This is written by Muslims. It's verified by Muslims. Does this prove my point? Did you think this at least lends evidence to my point?
1 second, I'm reading. Yes. Denial of which is unbelief. Yeah, it does. It's like it's amazing how they are ignoring their entire religion and focus on the Quran just to escape the, how do you call it, your arguments. They never deal with your argument. They just say that you make it all up.
So whoever asked me earlier if I want to do a debate, do you understand why it's impossible to debate with them? Because they cannot. It's impossible. They cannot deal with the facts of their own deen. They're not allowed to reveal them. They're not allowed to speak about them. They cannot reveal them to you. It's illegal. It's the death penalty if they do. They can't. Understand? So they have to lie. They have to deceive. This religion, it's not even a religion, it's a deen, it's a political and military and legal system. It's a mess.
You know, I personally believe that Hans simply is not aware of his own ignorance, and I don't think he's deceiving on purpose. He's Hans, he's a German. I think he accepted the Islam on him or something like that. Never mind. Last question from Kalan. Let's see where that goes. Kalan? Kalan, you can speak. Or maybe.
Give me a moment, yeah.
I really want a question. I was wanting to make a comment. I see what Lloyd is doing because whenever I used to argue with Mormons, it wasn't the Book of Mormon that I would actually have to address. It would be the Pearl of Great Price, and it would be Deeds and Covenants. And they would use the Book of Mormon as an afterthought, but their evangelists would use the Book of Mormon, but to actually get to the crux and the point of their faith, you actually have to address the other books rather than the Book of Mormon. And I can see exactly what Lloyd is actually doing. I have done a little bit of study with what your topic is, and I just am so grateful to hear a man that actually addresses the truth about what the Sharia law is actually wanting to bring into every country that it touches. And that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kalan. Thank you.
So yeah, I've been on for a while, and it's been an interesting couple of hours. Look, I mean, I have little patience with nonsense. I mean, honestly, I have little patience because it's all dishonest. Um, if we go into jihad and I go into other Sharia manuals, they say the same things. If we go into child marriage and child divorce and child sex, you go into other Sharia manuals, they say the same thing. How is it that every major scholar of the four schools, that woman earlier acknowledged the four schools, why is it when you go into their legal text, they all say the same things? You want to have sex with a 3-year-old? Knock yourself out. If you tear her vagina down to the anus and you rip the skin open, well, don't do that again. But if nothing happens, enjoy yourself. That's disgusting. That is filthy. They all say it. They don't contradict. Show me show me in an authoritative Sharia manual, not some random book written by some random scholar who disagreed. Show me within the authoritative manuals of the four schools where I am wrong. Show me. I'm reading. I'm not making this up. I'm reading right out of the books.
Lloyd,
So-
you're lying to us all the time because you're not talking about the Quran. I'm sorry. Everything is invalid.
Here's the thing: is they're talking about the Quran, and their main scholars are also talking about the Quran. The Sharia is all about the Quran and also the Sunnah. Anyway, does anyone have a last question? Then we can call it a night. And you can always drop your ignorance, death threats, and lies in the comments, which I'm not going to read.
1 second, Edward, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, so I don't know. I've heard your talk, Lloyd. Thank you. Thank you for preparing and articulating such a difficult topic for people who don't know at all, other than what I see on TV. So this is very eye-opening. I'm just curious. 2 questions. One is, can ethnically non-Muslims, I don't even know if such thing exists, but can an Asian man like myself become a Muslim? And the second question is, do you guys in your religion have people like priests or preachers or pastors who are the leaders of the church, who through them God speaks and kind of lead the way of the faith? Do you guys have that kind of model or no?
Who's you guys? I mean, I'm not a Muslim.
Yeah.
So,
oh, you're not a Muslim? Oh, sorry. You were a Muslim person. So I'm talking about...
Oh my God, Edward! Oh my God! Oh my God, Edward!
When I say... Sorry, I just come in and out. So I appreciate what you're teaching and I understand it, but I'm just like those 2 facts. Like I'm curious if Muslims, not you, but Muslims who practice Muslim have
Islam.
preachers and also, or Islam.
Islam
okay,
has
preachers.
so look. I mean, I prefer to give answers when I can go to the reference works and actually show on the page, right? But to tackle that, to become a Muslim, all you have to do is pick your nose, spin around 3 times, and say the name of Allah, and Bob's your uncle. Okay. Okay, maybe not exactly. The basic fundamental of what constitutes a Muslim is someone who believes in Allah, believes in Muhammad, and believes in the last day, right? The end times when Muhammad comes back, right? And to become a Muslim, you say the Shahada, the testament of faith. Okay, you basically make a verbal declaration of your faith, right? The verbal declaration of faith, the Shahada, which also for the Muslims, please show me where the full Shahada, as Muslims say it today, where is that in the Quran? I'd love to see it. Please show me, because you know what? Oddly enough, Harry, again, it doesn't appear in the Quran. All Muslims say the Shahada, and the Shahada doesn't appear in the Quran. There's no full Shahada, right? So that is very, very interesting that they believe in something that isn't in the Quran. That's odd. But anyway, besides that, hypocrisy and contradiction. So you say the Shahada, and then you become a Muslim. So you don't have to have any knowledge. In fact, as I showed earlier, it is not required to have any knowledge whatsoever. You're expected to believe with total certainty with zero knowledge, right?
Okay.
So you can say the Shahada, and you're a Muslim. It's like bang, just like that. Okay.
Without feelings, the act of saying it is meeting the
because the act of saying it is a contract. The act of saying is technically it's a contract. If I recall, it's called bayan or baya. I need to have a look at it, but it's a contract. So you are signing technically a contract, a verbal contract with Allah, and if you break that contract, the penalty is death.
See,
It's
that's
a
weird
contract of
because
sale. It's a contract of sale,
we,
technically speaking.
right,
Yeah.
right. That's weird because you make contracts with the devil. You don't make contracts with God.
That is a very. I've raised this point in the past. You sell. You see, it's a contract of sale. Remember, I said a contract of sale.
Hmm.
So, what do you sell to the devil?
That
What
is
did you say you
interesting.
sell to the devil?
Well, you sell your soul to the devil, right? And you do a
Yes,
contract with the devil. But you
it's a
never
contract of
hear
sale.
you do a contract with God, right? At least in the
No,
Western world, you don't hear
no,
that. That's
correct,
interesting. Okay. And what about
correct.
my first question?
That was your second question.
Oh,
Okay, so look, you get prayer leaders, and Imam is a prayer leader. Now there's different classifications and gradations. So again, I do not have the notes in front of me. It's not like I'm prepared for every question. As you've noticed, I prefer to show the notes on screen directly so that everyone can see that I'm just reading it off their own books. I'm not making it up. But someone who leads, if there's 2 or 3 Muslims, right, someone has to become the prayer leader, and that's an Imam. He's just leading the prayer. But an Imam could also be an educated mujtahid, who's a scholar, a legal scholar, who is entitled to know everything about Islam and make religious decisions for his community.
so within
Yeah.
within the religion, you guys, or not, sorry, not you guys. So for the last like 5 weeks, man, I thought you were. Anyway, so the Muslims, they will. What's underlying that question is this: I want to know if there's someone, a leader within the community of faith that they believe in, if there's someone who guides
So
people,
so they will have
and if
they'll
so,
have an Imam. There'll be an Imam
then
who leads the group.
what do they believe? Do they believe just the Quran, or do they believe the books that you talk about?
They believe all
Because
this
if
stuff.
they believe the books that you talk about that came after the Quran, then what you're telling is that, like, how can anyone argue against that, right? If the leaders are saying, okay, we collectively believe in the aftermath interpretation of Quran by these scholars, and that is the truth, then how can anyone argue against that? So I think that would be a good asset to your argument. I think.
Thank you. But look, so think about this. When you become an Imam, when you become an educated scholar, okay, a proper educated theologian within Islam, right? Illegals, well, they're legal scholars and then they're theologians. They're different divisions, and okay. But forgetting the nuances there. To become an Imam, you have to go and study at a seminary. The prime seminary in the Sunni Islamic world is Al Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, which I've mentioned. Okay, which validates this book. They give it their stamp of approval for being totally authentic, except for the lies that the translator tells in the book. But that's a different story. So, anywho, on that point, you have to go study, and the top scholars will go to study for 5 to 7 years. Now, do you honestly think that he studies only the Quran? Because if you go
No,
and search,
absolutely not.
exactly, they go through a whole list of books. They go through a whole list of Sharia manuals. They're going to do, in their first year, they're going to study some basic Sharia manuals, like the Muqtasar al-Quduri. They'll study like that as one of the basic ones. They'll probably end, on some courses I've seen, they'll end with the Hedaya, which is 2,652 pages or something, 4 volumes, massive, detailed. Okay, I'm familiar with volume 2 of the Hedaya to some degree. So they will then start with this basic book, and then they will work their way through, and they'll end up with whatever major book. Okay, so they don't just read the Quran; they study a whole host of things. For instance, if you want to issue parking tickets, is parking tickets mentioned in the Quran? No. So how do you establish Islamic law around the issues of parking? Well, it's not in the Quran. So you have to then exegete. You've got to take all of these ideas from the Quran, from the Hadith, from the Tafsir, from wherever, and you've got to exegete those into laws. And that is what these scholars have done, and that's the Sharia.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions.
Sure.
Lloyd, I thought that everyone is born a Muslim, but we just are ignorant to the religion, right? I mean, isn't that true?
Apparently so, because you don't convert to Islam, you revert to Islam. Muslim converts are not converts, they're reverts. They revert to the original religion because they get led away through fitna, through temptation away from Islam. So when you were raised, let's say you, for instance, you become a Muslim, that's reversion to the original religion, to Allah's religion.
So, okay, I'm glad to know that I'm Muslim after all. Did you speak about the Baphomet connection? Because maybe I
We
missed
didn't
it.
get there, man. We got distracted with that chickie, right?
Yeah, I really need you to do the Baphomet thing if you have the energy.
Look, it's been 2.5 hours, dude. Let's call it a night, and we'll tackle
Okay.
this again in a while. What do you think? I mean, it's a lot. I've hinted at it. I will go back. Let me briefly go to it. Okay, so let me briefly touch on that issue. Let me just
That's
briefly
another
touch
2
on it.
hours.
Dude, I don't have 2 hours. Trust me. Look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up. Oh, Mosses. Okay, hold on. Just guys, I'm going to try and just get this done very, very quickly. This is an introduction. Don't consider this gospel. It's not the full story. And there's a lot to be. Understand, I am one of the only people, if not the only person, who talks about these issues. In fact, as far as I know, I am literally the only person on the internet talking about this, showing this stuff. Okay, no one else has yet, to my knowledge. So understand that I'm one person researching a number of different strands. I don't have time to do everything, not all at once. It takes time to pull all this together. So I am showing what I've collected so far, and there's area here, room for people to explore, add more information. So let's have a look. Baphomet. Now, there's a lot to be said, and I will come to that in a different show. We're going to talk about this, but modern scholars do agree that the name Baphomet was an old French corruption of the name Muhammad. Okay? With the interpretation being that some of the Templars, through their long occupation of the Middle East, had begun incorporating Islamic ideas into their belief system, specifically Sufi ideas. And this was seen and documented by the Inquisitors as heresy. That's from Wikipedia. Fine. Now, you've got various sources, and I've got plenty. There's like 20 pages on this crap. So don't say, well, you never said this, okay? Just understand I've got a whole bunch of stuff, and I can only do one page at a time. Now, numerous sources from the era state, for instance, this chronicler of the Crusades called mosques Baphomarias. And then a Saracen, okay, the Saracens comes from Sarah, okay, the outcasts of Sarah, okay. An Islamic idol is called a Baphomet. Now understand that Baphomet was associated with Satan only, I think, in the 19th century. So that is a fairly recent invention. Prior to that, the connotation, if you go to the 11th and 12th centuries, the connotation with Baphomet is specifically with Muhammad and the Muslims. Okay, so the historical connotation prior. Now, this is the Baphomet goat of Eliphas Levi, which is, I think, a 15th or 16th century or 17th century depiction. In many other depictions, it's just a head or it's just like different, but this has become the popular. This is now the culturally popular depiction of the Baphomet as Satan. But notice they do have here the crescent and the star of Islam, right? So Islam does share the crescent and star here, which also happens to be the symbolism of the cult of Isis, 3rd century cult, which competed with Christianity, especially in the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. So I'm going to give a little bit now. Now, in the trial of the Templars, one of the main charges was their supposed worship of a heathen idol head known as a Baphomet. Now, understand the whole concept of a treasure that the Templars had, or the treasure that they took away, or the head that they had. There's no definitive evidence that states that this was a physical object. When they speak of a treasure, they could mean knowledge. Their treasure, they found the secret knowledge, the head of knowledge. The head of knowledge is a Sufi term. And it doesn't mean a physical object. It means you've gone to the fountainhead of knowledge. You've gone to the peak, the pinnacle of the sacred knowledge, the secret knowledge. As I discussed in the earlier shows, the secret knowledge, the gnosis, right? So now people are going to go, but the Templars, the Catholic Church wanted their money, and the French king wanted to steal their money, and they were corrupt, and they tortured them, and they stole their money, which is a nice story. It's all very fine and well, and also not conclusively proved in any shape, way, or form. Because the Templars, if you go back to the 11th century or the 12th century, the Templars, there are numerous accusations against them of corruption, of treachery, where they collaborated and worked with and worked for the Muslims for money, right? Where they actually aided and abetted the Muslims. So there are numerous accusations going back long before, at least a century before they were disbanded, right? So the Templars. Now the popular conception is the Templars were the good guys, and oh my God, look how the Catholic Church killed the good guys. The Catholic Church is evil, which is a fine sort of polemic against the Church. but for what it's worth, whatever. But understand the Templars, there were numerous accusations, numerous rumors, numerous stories, numerous narrations of the Templars having gone well off the rails, the Templars having gone bad long before this happened. So the Templars had developed a very bad reputation. And also when people say, but this is the history, no. Up to 1928 alone, 1,300 books had been written on the Templars. That was up to 1928. I have no idea how many books are written today. Probably way more than 1,300. Historians are not by any means stating only one side of the tale. Well, the Templars are good and the Catholic Church bad, and the French king was horrible. Oh my God, he killed those heroes. So no, scholars are very much divided on this issue, and a lot of it is that people have glommed onto a particular narrative that suits their bias against the church, that suits their bias that the Templars were heroes. No, the Templars were, as I said, there's a lot of accusations of treachery and collaboration with the enemy against the Templars. So I will pause there. I mean, that's a lot to get into for the future. So understand, I just took the time to read through some of this stuff, and there's plenty of contrary evidence which goes in a totally different direction. And if you start to look and you look at the Islamic claims are explicit. I mean, people make the claim the Templars became Muslims. The Templars became Muslims, they became Sufis, they started to indulge in Sufi practices, and they are the ones who smuggled Islamic Freemasonry into England and into Scotland. And there's plenty of stories. We'll get to all of that. But understand, the Sufis claim to have founded the Freemasons because they are the original Freemasons, and the Templars smuggled the Islamic Freemasonry as the Scottish Rite into Scotland. I'll pause there for the moment. Your thoughts?
Lloyd, just very short comment by Pickley, and that's it. We will finish the night.
Okay.
Thanks, Lloyd. It's been great, man. Really enjoyed tonight, actually, in particular. I think you've been on fire. But no, so the question / comments. Harry's question earlier, it seemed to me to present a bit of a logic problem in the sense that if every Muslim is a revert, right, then surely they should be by default killed immediately as they convert because they're made apostate. At some point they're a Muslim, then they're not, right? How do you get over that, or how did they get over that?
That's not that much of a conundrum because remember, they're supposed to make war on all non-Muslims, right, to convert them by persuasion or by force. So they need to convert the world by persuasion or by force. Okay, they have the option. So when you revert, now don't forget, a Muslim who was born a Muslim, lived as a Muslim, within a Muslim culture, who leaves, is given up to 3 days. Now some scholars, like ISIS, who follows some of the other scholars, which is quite legitimate, they'll kill you offhand right there and then, bang, done. Some will give you a day, some will give you 3 days. It depends on how they interpret that. Okay, they all agree, you have to die. Just when and how, well, there's a little bit of leeway there. So this, as I said, this difference is called ikhtilaf. Okay, there's leeway. Allah gives leeway for people to form different judgments based on circumstances or abilities or understanding, etc., etc. So that is part of their formal doctrine. So no, a Muslim, but someone like you who might convert, no, you're not killed because you are coming back, and therefore you are forgiven.
Does it also,
because also you are ignorant. There's also ignorance that plays into it. Yeah. Go on.
It's also significant that once you've spoken the Shahada, you are expected to begin paying the zakat and join in with all the rituals. In other words, you become completely captivated.
You are morally responsible. They call that you are morally responsible. Yeah, so you are morally responsible to fulfill the obligations of Islam. Those are the basic practices within Islam that you're morally responsible for, yes.
Okay, guys, we have to finish it. Lloyd, thank you so much. It was exciting, entertaining. I love it. I'm sure Hans enjoyed it a lot, and he will come again. And
yeah, I'll bet people are he's intolerant. He doesn't let people speak. I'm sorry. I've got this much tolerance for bullshit.
It's okay. Your life is threatened.
I was delighted to see young Zabida come here as well. I've often been on her YouTube streams, and I can tell you honestly, her conduct there is is not courteous, polite, or whatever, and you're going to get insulted. You're going to get your microphone shut off whenever she feels like it and runs into a rage.
No, they're required. Now, understand, they are required to insult you. They're required. It's a mandatory step in their commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. I've shown the list before. They have to abuse you verbally. It's a requirement as one of their steps prior to utilizing violence. It's a pre-violence step. But thank you for sharing that. That's actually very interesting.
Okay. Lloyd, thank you very much. Have a beautiful night, and I think we are not going to see you next Monday. So in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, next Monday is going to be a little difficult, so I cannot. I just want to be cautious. It's probably I will not be available, so the next week should be fine. Yes.
Perfect.
But I'll keep you updated. But it's probably will not be available.
We can change the day from Monday to something else if you like. Next week.
We can do then. Probably we can make it to Tuesday or something if need be. So we can always shift it to another day. So certainly.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. See you then.
See
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Have a beautiful night.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Cheers. Goodbye.